Oh, hey, Amir.
Hey.
I just called Jang Wen. I just also forwarded you the email I got from Gottlieb. It's essentially we wouldn't get refunded if we give them $3,000, but if we give them the $1,000 that relates to COVID response, then that would be reimbursable. So I called him, and he wants us to do a vote on the $1,000, and then also if we could do another vote, knowing that we wouldn't get reimbursed by it for the other 3,000. So I mean, you don't have a vote in it, but
knowing that we wouldn't get reimbursed, hey?
yeah,
That's
shitty.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think I think that's gonna be a tough one to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to like weigh in here, but like I'd have a tough time voting for that.
Yeah, so yeah, it's gonna be hard. I think it's gonna be a 0 to 6, but the $1,000 will be good.
Yeah.
And that was thanks to our friend Councilmember White.
Yeah, I know. I need to drop off for a second, and then I'm gonna drop right back on.
Sure.
Here I am. See the flag?
I like the flag, but I don't see me. I wonder what I'm doing wrong.
I clicked on my box and it had a thing that enabled the visual.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can do that. Maybe I'll start all over again.
Hello, everyone.
Hey there. A little more light.
Hey, while you guys are here, do you have any questions about any resolutions and all the stuff I sent you today?
Why is there all that echo when papers?
I don't know.
Now you're on mute. Why am I not?
Yeah, do you guys have any questions about anything? I think I'm gonna do some, I mean, I assume I'll be doing some screen sharing on some of these things, so.
And if anybody wants something that they're not getting the screen sharing thing to work on their side, just email it to me and I can share it from my screen.
Just a sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Because I'm not lighting up for some reason when I speak.
Oh, even if somebody else is speaking, I still see you as the big picture on my screen.
Oh, because I see you as the big picture on mine and I don't see a little box, a
You can
colored line
switch
around my
it.
box.
You can switch it in the top right instead of, there's a bunch of different views you can have. There's gallery view, speaker view. So that you can see more people.
Gallery lets me see everybody that's on the call now.
Ah, yes. Okay, I see that now.
Will the public be visible on the screen, or will they just be joining by audio?
It depends, I think, which way they signed in.
Ah,
I think it's just audio.
Yeah, it once we allow them to talk, it's just audio.
Well, I thought last time they appeared on the side as they came in.
They,
Click on, yeah, if you click on participants at the bottom, it'll pop up.
Oh, I see. No, they're not showing up.
their names will pop up, but not pictures.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, goodness. I am just, well, why does it show 7 when I only see 6 of us? 5 of us. It shows 8 participants on my screen, but, oh, it just says attendees 3. Okay, I see.
So we have 3 attendees, hello attendees. We just don't know who you are.
Ali, Brian, and Walter. If you click on attendees, it'll give you the list.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes.
Oh, and there's Chris.
Yeah, hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Amir jumped off for a minute and said he would jump back on soon.
So I don't know if you can answer this for me, Gordon. If I have this up, how can I get to documents on my computer or, you know, that are in emails or whatever without like closing out this window?
So as long as you minimize the window, or like you go to the bottom of your computer and it has the taskbar and you can click on other programs, as long as you don't press the X or the close button, you'll stay on and you can navigate to other software or to your web browser or whatever without leaving this meeting.
Okay.
If we wanted to share a document, how would we do that? I see there's a share screen icon.
So I'm, like last time, I'm planning to post the agenda and all the other documents in the chat bar, which if you click on chat, you should be able to see a link to the agenda. And then if either of you want to see a link, like I kind of am doing it as the items come up. So when we start talking about the minutes, I'll post the minutes. But if either of you aren't able to figure out the kind of toggling between the computer and Zoom, I can like privately message you over Zoom a link to a document if, you know, if it's like something that we haven't talked about yet and I haven't posted.
So I just tried clicking on the agenda and it didn't do anything. Off to the side, off in the chat, the agenda isn't highlighted, but it's got an HTTPS address. But so when I click on it, nothing happens. So I'm not understanding.
Okay, I may need to change the permissions on it. One sec. Okay, maybe try it now.
Yeah, it's still not lit up, you know, or blued or whatever.
How you guys doing?
Hey, good to see you, Amir.
Good
I
to
have my
see
phone.
you. Oh, yeah, me too. There, it's a parrot on
Yeah.
my shoulder.
Do we want to start this thing?
Yeah, just 1 second. What's going on with Ted? And what can't you see?
Well, I was trying to figure out how to look at documents while I'm also on this Zoom call.
Oh yeah, that's you. So what I'm doing is the Zoom screen takes up one part of it. The Zoom window takes up one part of my screen, and the other bit takes up the other half.
And there's some clever way to do that, I guess. I can't even seem to.
You can just resize the window.
And for the links, Laura Foster Whitaker pointed out in the chat that to attendees, or possibly to everyone, you might also need to copy the URLs and paste them into a browser that you open yourself for the links to work.
Okay, so right now, are we live to the public?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so then why don't we just get started? Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending the May meeting of ANC 1C. I'm Amir Irani, the chair of ANC 1C, and I'll start with the introduction of the rest of my commissioners. I'll go starting at 1C08, Commissioner Jackson.
I am Chris Jackson from the south eastmost side of ANC 1.
Japer, you're not coming through.
Hey, sorry, total noob. My name is Japer. I am the commissioner for 1C07, which is the west side of the Reed Cook neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Michaela Wright. I'm commissioner for 1C06, which is the northeastern corner of Adams Morgan.
05, so I guess I'm John Sotoli from ANC 1C04. That's includes Lanier Heights. Pieces of it anyway.
And Ted Guthrie from 1C03, which is 18th to 19th, Biltmore to Wyoming.
And that leaves me. I'm Mary Ronnie 1C01, that's the southwest corner of Adams Morgan. Moving on to chair announcements. I don't have anything for this month. I do want to reiterate that people should fill in the census. So please do that. I talked about that. Our whole commission has passed a resolution about it. Ward 1 we had a big gain, bigger than expected gain over the last month. I think our self-reporting percentage right now for the DC census is around 54% or so. That's up a couple percentage points. Also, the next thing is it's important to request an absentee ballot, a mail-in ballot, and you can do that by going to votefordc.com. So those are my announcements. I'd like to move on to the Secretary's report. Commissioner Wright.
I have nothing to report. The minutes will be in the consent agenda.
Okay. Moving to the Treasurer's report, Commissioner Bowles.
Yes, I have submitted the second quarterly financial report for folks to view, and it is also in the consent agenda. But if anyone would like, we can discuss it further in detail. And that's all I have for treasurer. But I do have an announcement for PS and E-chair.
Are there any questions for the quarterly financial report or for the treasurer specifically before you move on to the PSNE?
Did, Japer, you had talked about working with someone at the Office of the ANCs to make sure that it was all squared away. And what was the squaring away, and did it get done? And is that reflected in?
Yeah, so surprisingly, what I submitted to you was all correct. If you have been a treasurer or if you're familiar with the process, it is an Excel sheet that is very finicky, and it was my first time reporting it by myself. The previous treasurer worked with me to complete the first one, Bridget Pooley, and so I was very confident in that, where I wasn't as confident in this submission. So I feel good now after speaking with Dawn, and yeah, I am here for your approval, and yeah, we should be good.
Cool.
And I had just dropped in the chat the web address where you can find the agenda. In addition to the agenda, there are each of the agenda items that have additional documentation. It's hyperlinked there. You can click on it, download it, and view everything that we'll be seeing.
And if you'd like, I can just show what the quarterly financial report looks like, if that would be helpful for folks, or I think it would be helpful for folks.
That
It is
was,
online.
Because we would typically print it and show it to people at the meeting. So here, let me screen share if possible. Okay, can you folks see that?
I can see that you're starting, there it is, yes.
So mostly the biggest spending with this quarterly report was Mary. And then we also had a high FedEx bill. This also, our quarterly financial report also includes paying taxes for Mary. So this report reflects that as well. So unfortunately, all of it goes down into personal and to office supplies. But I also sent over the monthly reports that give a breakdown of each individual thing, and that should be posted on the website as well. If you give me a moment, I can find those too.
Okay, let's move on. While Japer's pulling that up, Commissioner Bowles is pulling that up, we're going to move on to commissioner announcements. We'll start with the committee chairs and going to ABC committee, Commissioner Guthrie.
Yeah, we're not planning to have a meeting this month, so there's nothing to report on public safety at this point.
Okay. As far as PZT goes, the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee, we don't have agenda items right now. The meeting, if we do have an agenda item, and there are one or two that are kind of rising up to the surface here, the meeting would take place on May 20th at 7 p.m. Same place, but not the same link. But we will provide an updated link, an updated Zoom link on our website if we do hold the PZT meeting on May 20th at 7 p.m. And then Japer for PS&E.
Yes. Okay. So I was able to find the monthly financial reports to show that really quickly. But for PS&E, we will be discussing the Colorama mural. There's the Colorama Park Fund is interested in pursuing and going forth with a mural. So they would like to do a presentation on that. Simultaneously, the Department of Parks and Recreation will also be joining us. So that'll be a good time to hear about what's happening with our parks during coronavirus. But additionally, in the pipeline, we still have projects and repairs and improvements, such as the Colorama Fund's mural, that still need to happen. So we still have business. And I will work with Gordon and Secretary Wright to ensure that that information is sent out for folks so everyone can join. But that's all I have currently on that agenda.
Will the parks presentation include something about what in the world is happening with the smaller Triangle Park, the Ann Hughes Hargrove Park, which was, they authorized money for it, but
Yeah.
we haven't ever seen like a real plan, and I
Yeah.
don't understand why.
That's something we can press them on. In my correspondence, I'll ensure that they have a plan or are at least able to answer to that.
Okay, great.
Any other?
I wanted to go back to the treasurer's report.
Yes.
I had a question about the receipt was like $250 or something. Why was that so small? The
District allotment.
allotment.
I can check. Let's share here. Okay, so here's the January balance. We didn't get okay, so for this term, I believe that this includes, or it's January, February, and March. And for, you are asking specifically about the receipts, right?
Yeah. The 225.35? Normally that should be considerably more than that, and that's why I'm asking.
So we didn't receive a disbursement in this quarter. We received one previously before this quarter, and we received one after this quarter.
So what's
so the total receipts is, oh, okay. You know what? It might be in these reports. Okay, so this is the January expenses. February expenses. March, and these were all sent to you as well. And then April. So April isn't in this thing, but I want to start showing each month's funds.
I see we have a 5,000.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. So I will have to ask. I'll have to ask. I don't know. And this information is not like the checking. This isn't the Excel sheet. This is just a report generated from the Excel sheet. So I'd have to look at that. But I will follow up on that and let you know after this meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So it shows the.
And it may be a simple answer, but I just can't answer it.
Japer, it shows the district allotment right there.
It does, but in this report, he's asking what this would be,
Yeah.
Well, it's the two.
and it's the district allotment,
Yeah.
but I don't know why it's only
As
$225.
opposed to the 5,000 that showed in the other one that you just had up.
Well, I wouldn't assume it would be in that one because the April month, from what I believe is not in the F2, is in this quarter. Because we pass reports from the previous quarter.
Right.
So that April monthly report you just showed, that's for another quarter rather than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is separate from the quarterly financial report, but it was the previous month's finances. So we need to get in to the habit of showing that. So that's why I'm showing that and sending it out.
My guess, Japer, is that this has to do with getting allotments that had not been distributed when they would normally be distributed because there wasn't enough verification or whatever. So that the 5,000 is way more than we normally get, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's including some stuff that otherwise would have come in. And the reason it's only 225 on this is that some of them were disputed that got resolved, would be my guess.
And the current worksheet that I'm working on does have disputed claims at the very top of it. So that may be why it's affected in this quarter. But like I said, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask. So I don't know so from what I do know, I asked Dawn if there is a discrepancy with this, we could pass another vote in June for a clarification.
Yeah.
But so I'm fine with moving forward with it, and then passing a clarification in June, or if there's not a clarification needed. But I definitely want to figure out what Ted's question is.
Okay.
And it may be something very simple, and I just don't know how to answer to it because I'm new in this role still. So.
Right. And I think it'll also help you figure out as things come in, what the flow is like and whether there's
Exactly.
some sort of problem that needs to get dealt with. It hasn't been, but.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions?
Let's see. Other commissioners, other questions?
Cool.
If not, let's keep going through commissioner announcements. We'll start with Commissioner Zatoli. We'll keep going with Commissioner Zatoli.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up on your comments, Chair, about the voting. There's going to be a primary scheduled for June 2nd. And the Board of Elections is discouraging people from showing up to vote. This is just for our safety. One of the things that is different is that there's only going to be 2 polling places open in Ward 1, maybe about 20 across all of DC. But our 2 polling places are at the Girard Street Rec Center, the community center where there's often early voting, and also at the Masonic Temple on U Street. Now, those polling places will be open not just on Election Day, June 2nd, but also for about 10 days before the actual election day, for what normally would be a period of early voting. But, there's likely to be lines and crowds and risks for any of those times. So my recommendation is that we vote by mail instead. And thank you very much, Japer. Japer is holding up the same document I was going to hold up. It's the, I can't get mine on the screen.
Voter guide.
The voter guide, which I got it in the mail today.
Yes.
And it
so did I,
includes,
yeah.
it includes a couple of absentee ballot request forms. You've got to fill out that form and mail it back to the Board of Elections. Happily, there's also a postage paid reply envelope in the package. So if you get your voter's guide, fill out the form, send it in, and the Board of Elections will mail you a ballot, and you can safely vote at home that way. There are other ways of requesting the ballot, and all of that information, the locations of the polling centers and whatnot, it's all at the Board of Elections website. And with any luck, I've just added to chat the link to the Board of Elections website. So a follow up there. Please do vote, but find a safe way to vote. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Zatoli. Commissioner Wright, any public announcements?
My only announcement is, oh, I'm glad he's back, is just to wish Commissioner Bowles a happy birthday, because I know it's coming up later this week. So happy birthday. Wish we could celebrate in person. That's all for me.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Commissioner Jackson, do you have any announcements?
No announcements for me. Happy early birthday though, Japer.
Okay, moving on to public announcements. I'd like to, I think if you're dialing in, it's *9 if you're dialing in by phone, if you want to raise your hand for a public announcement. If you're in by Zoom, just let us know by raising your hand or letting us know by the chat that you'd like to say something. Gordon, is it *9? Is that right?
Yes, it is. Area code 202 and the last 3 digits 752. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, thank you very much, and good evening, ANC 1C. This is Trevor's Culpepper with Pepco. How is everybody doing?
Doing very well. Thank you, Trevor's.
Oh, thank you very much. I definitely miss seeing you guys, and wanted to just alert you about, give you an update on Capital Grid first and foremost, and then alert you all about a reliability project that will be starting in the within the ANC sometime late summer, in the late summer. So as you all probably are aware, the Capital Grid project was approved by the Public Service Commission in 2019, which did include the Champlain substation upgrade. And the construction of the substation will not start until many years later, 2023 to be exact. However, part of the Capital Grid project does involve the installation of a 10-mile transmission line, and construction has started on that 10-mile transmission line in several segments along the 10 miles. So currently, construction is taking place in Columbia Heights along 11th Street, and then in Petworth on New Hampshire Avenue, as well as the Buzzard Point area. And as I mentioned before in other ANC meetings, that the work will be segmented and phased, and wanted to let you know that construction will be taking place near the ANC along 16th Street, as well as Florida Avenue and in Florida Avenue. We have 2 contractors that have been procured to do this work, and it's Anchor Construction as well as CW and Sons. And some of the construction will take place July as well, and throughout the rest of the year. And they'll start by installing manholes first, followed by the conduit as well. So I wanted an opportunity to, present before the ANC and give more specifics on the construction schedule, and have you meet our community coordinators that we have for this project. We've expanded our external affairs team to make sure that we're enhancing the engagement throughout the construction phase. So I wanted to make sure to let you know that, and I'm also following up with the email on this as well. But then also wanted to alert you about a reliability project. Well, first and foremost, there will be preliminary work for the substation construction as well. So in addition to the transmission line construction, which will be this year and next year, there will be some additional preliminary work, which is required to transfer existing customers that are currently served by the Champlain substation to nearby substations. And that work is expected to start in March of 2021 and will probably last for an extended amount of time into 2021. We don't have the design plans right now for the preliminary work associated with the substation upgrade, but I just wanted to alert you well in advance that this is also going to be more construction associated with the project. So just to let you know, there is a transmission construction that's taking place that'll be starting in the immediate future, and then preliminary work that will take place next year for the substation upgrade. But additionally, there is a separate project, which is more of a reliability project that will be taking place in SMD's ANC 1.4, ANC 1C14, ANC 1C05, and ANC 1C06. And it is a rubber leg cable project. And this is a reliability project that is purposed to replace aging cable that's currently serving neighbors in this area. So what crews will be doing is taking out old age rubber leg cable and replacing it with newer cable to enhance the reliability and service to the neighborhood. And that work will most likely take place starting in September and August along 18th Street, Summit Place Northwest, Ontario Road, as well as Columbia Road. And it will be a few blocks along this street that this work will take place. And it's part of a longer 10-year reliability project where we'll be replacing aged cable that's servicing certain neighborhoods throughout the district. And this is one area that was identified as needing to be replaced. So I know there was a lot there, but definitely wanted just to provide that comment and an opportunity to, talk specifically about the project at the next upcoming ANC meeting.
Okay.
If I can just confirm, you'll send us an email with those particulars?
Yes, sir. We'll send you an email with the particulars, and then, in addition, we will be hosting community meetings and definitely looking to talk to the, bring this before the ANC in a formal meeting, and then also looking for opportunities to partner with the ANC to host community meetings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culpepper. Other questions from commissioners or members of the public?
Brian, Barry, you should be able to speak.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is Brian Barry with the Adams Morgan bid. I just wanted to let everybody know that our website, admodc.org.
Brian, I just wanted to know if there were other questions for Mr. Culpepper.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Apologies.
Yeah. It may be that there aren't, and that we could just keep going.
It looks like there's.
What is that?
A hand is raised. I don't know if that's for a question from Mr. Culpepper or, but I see.
Hey, Zach.
Gordon, Mr. Culpepper, if you could remind your truck drivers and operators to please park in legal parking spots. I've been walking on Columbia Road recently and seen Pepco trucks parked out in bike lanes and in bus lanes and in places where they should not be parked. So please remind them of that. Thank you.
I definitely will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. And if there are no other questions for Mr. Culpepper, we'll move on to the next portion of our public announcements. Brian, please.
Hi again. So didn't mean to step on Trevorris, but I'm Brian Barron with the Adams Morgan Bid. I wanted to make sure everybody knows that our website, admodc.org, has a list of all of the businesses that are still open, doing delivery and carry out, and retail business that are doing business via various other means, by mail or by other pickup. And there are also a number of restaurants doing Mother's Day specials this week. Mintwood Place, Girl from Ipanema, Retro Bottega, Federalist Pig, Little Shop of Flowers is open, doing deliveries. You can't go in and pick it up. But yeah, please stay tuned to that. Please frequent your local businesses, and go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. We're putting out 4 or 5 times a week now with updates on everything that's going on. That's it.
Thank you, Brian. Is Allie from our council member's office on? Allie, do you want to give public announcements on behalf of our council member?
Hold on one second, I'm finding her.
Okay.
Allie, you can be able to talk now.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, commissioners. Happy early birthday, Commissioner Bowles. So I wanted to give a quick update from the council. I also am just sending right now my contact information. So my name is Allie Bobak. I'm the Constituent Services Coordinator for Councilmember Nadeau. You'll see my email, which is abobak@dccouncil.us. Again, abobak@dccouncil.us. And my cell number is 202-531-5186, 202-531-5186. The council had their third virtual meeting this week. Councilmember Nadeau introduced the Foreclosure Moratorium Emergency Amendment Act of 2020. This legislation closes the existing gaps by providing explicit and clear language to broaden protections for all homeowners during the coronavirus emergency. We also, in the Omnibus Emergency Amendment Act of 2020, the Coronavirus Omnibus Emergency Amendment Act of 2020, this was the third emergency bill to address additional areas of need during the ongoing public health emergency. There are 30 sections of the bill, and I'll just highlight a few things, which is that it creates new reporting requirements for conditions at the DC jail. It authorizes remote notarizations. It expands ANC grant-making authority, which I'm sure you all might talk about later. It creates limitations on third-party restaurant food delivery fee. Apps can now only charge restaurants a commission fee of up to 15%. And it also requires landlords to reimburse amenity fees and rental housing if the amenity is closed. Implement regular cleaning of household common areas and create payment plans for struggling residents and rental units. So there's a lot there. I'm happy to send it to anybody, and that's also on the DC Council website. Just also an update, the mayor is going to be submitting her budget to council on May 12th. The committee of the whole public briefing on the mayor's fiscal year 2021 proposed budget and financial plan is scheduled for Wednesday, May 13th at 10 a.m. When those budget meetings start, the Committee of Human Services, which Councilmember Nadeau chairs, will be using a virtual platform to conduct committee hearings. And the hearings will still be broadcast live on the DC Council channel. I'm happy to follow up with anybody on how to do that, but as normal, you will be able to provide written testimony, live testimony, or voicemail testimony. I think those are the main updates. I would just encourage everybody. There's a lot going on, so please do sign up for our newsletter. If you go to brianneknadeau.com, you can sign up on the main page, and that we send out usually about bi-weekly newsletters with all of the updated information. Or again, my email is abobak@dccouncil.us, and my number is 202-531-5186. And I'm here for any questions if you all have any.
Thank you, Ally.
Question. Okay.
Commissioner Bowles?
Yeah,
Yeah, something.
so I know that I know that at least Chairman and Charles Allen on the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee will also, in addition to the voicemails, he will be live streaming the committees on Facebook. I don't know if you're able to, but if you could relay how important that is to advocates and community members who don't necessarily want to sign up for Zoom, but are very familiar with Facebook, that would be really helpful in getting out her message, especially as it relates to DHS and how the Department of Human Services helps so many in our community, and how important that department is. So if you could relay that to her, I would much appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. That's a great feedback, and I will relay that to the council member.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to other public announcements. Do we have anyone from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations? Any mokers? Hello?
I don't see Anthony on the line, but it may be a phone number too.
Okay, I see a hand raised. Matt, you're on. Please feel free to go ahead with your public announcement.
Yeah, thanks, Amir.
Mhm.
Hi, everyone. It's Matt Wexler. I'm on Zoom, but I can't see anybody. But it's nice to see all of you virtually again. I'm very excited this evening to announce formally the creation of the Adams Morgan Commercial Development Coalition, an organization that will be focused on the evolution of Adams Morgan commercial core as we come out of this awful pandemic. Our coalition, which consists of numerous commercial property owners and business owners, is beginning to assess how Adams Morgan grows out of what is an absolute economic crisis in the food and beverage, hospitality, and retail spaces, which you all know are crucial to Adams Morgan's neighborhood economy, and all of which help make Adams Morgan such a unique place to live. I think you are all well aware that the Line Hotel has been closed for some time now, and all of the retailers and food and beverage businesses in our portfolio are not open as well, and are all hurting. And I want to say, despite my excitement for the creation of this new coalition, we are all really worried about the business environment in Adams Morgan. I've spoken over the past several weeks with many property owners as well as many businesses. We're all hurting, and we're hurting badly. So please, continue to support as best you can, at this time, the businesses, because it may mean it may make their ability to reopen in a relatively normal way possible. And truly, every dollar matters. Our coalition aims to harness some of the energy from the challenges that all of us are facing and work on a few big solutions to help all neighborhood stakeholders, including all the residents. And, I personally look forward to, and we all look forward to working with the ANC over the coming months and years. We, hopefully return to some level of normalcy soon. So thanks for the opportunity to mention that.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And I just saw that our Ward 1 Mocher came on. Is that Anthony? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
All right, doing very well. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Japer, in advance. Commissioner Japer, sorry about that. I hope all is well.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to keep reminding everyone to continue to check COVID at COVID-19, coronasdc.gov. I'm sorry. Every day, it's always changing and there's always updates on that site. The mayor is hiring for the contact tracers for the COVID. You can go to dc.gov to get the information if you have anyone interested in seeking employment in that area. They're doing hiring right now and setting up for interviews at this time. If you have any neighbors, Ward 1 neighbors that have any problems with UI unemployment, you can forward them to my email, which is anthony.moore@dc.gov. I can contact them with the DOES liaison for the mayor's office, and we can try to troubleshoot some of their problems so they can get some money in their pockets if possible. I don't have any more updates other than continue to check the website, continue to check into the press conferences to get the real-time updates, probably faster than I can get it to you guys. If you have any questions, you can always email me at anthony.moore@dc.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Any other public announcements? Please feel free to raise your hand or drop a message in the chat. Otherwise, we'll move on to our regular agenda, or rather our consent agenda. Latoya, please go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I just wanted to stop past and say hello. The U.S. Attorney's Office, we are still in the community. We are doing virtual meetings. If you have any questions, any concerns, we're nothing but a phone call and email away. I hope everyone is staying safe. If you need any information on the COVID-19 scams, one that is in our office now that we are investigating and prosecuting, I will have that information. So if you need anything from the U.S. Attorney's Office, we are here.
Thank you, Latoya.
Hey, Latoya, this is Commissioner Bowles. Are you aware if the hate crime bias task force is still having meetings, or if those are being moved to virtual meetings?
So we did have one virtual meeting already, and it wasn't a success because we had just got our platform. We wasn't too familiar with it, but we are going to have another one soon, maybe in like June.
Yeah, that's great. I know that there were a lot of members of the LGBTQ community that are interested in following up. And I know that there was a previous one, but a lot of folks just weren't able to attend. There was a lot of scheduling conflicts. So I think the June one would be more well attended.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Latoya, if there's, you mentioned COVID scams, could you just tell us one or two of the the common scams for us to look out for?
I know that being though we're in a pandemic, everyone, I'm not really familiar with the one that's in the office right now, but I do have press release on them. I just got my computer back up and running today after like 3 weeks. So first thing tomorrow, if you could shoot me do I have your email? Are you on my community, my court report list?
Yes. So if you send it over to us, then we can put it on our website just to make sure the community knows about the scams that are out there.
Okay, so I will send you the press release first thing tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Latoya.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, other announcements. Doesn't seem like it, so let's move on to the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, and they are the minutes from last month, as well as the financial report that we just went over. Are there any, I'm gonna just ask for any objections to any of those items from commissioners or members of the public. If there's no objections, then let's call a vote. All those in favor of adopting the 2 items on the consent agenda as listed, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Sound unanimous? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, passes 7-0-0. Moving on to the regular agenda, there is a presentation by the Urban Forestry Division of a tree plan at BB&T Plaza. BB&T Plaza is the at the northeastern corner of 18th and Columbia in Adams Mill. And we have Alit from the Urban Forestry Division of DDOT to give that presentation. Alit, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Would it be possible for one of the commissioners to share the PDF on the screen for anyone else viewing?
Sure. Japer, can you pull that up? I only ask you, Japer, because you had shared the financial report earlier.
There it is. So my name is Alit Balk. I am a landscape architect with the District Department of Transportation in the Urban Forestry Division. So we're the group that part of the operations division within DDOT. We take care of all of the street trees, the trees in the public space, as well as the trees at DC parks and DC schools. And this project came to us as an opportunity from the Adams Morgan bid from Brian Barry and from Kristen. And I think that they had been looking at some opportunities through DOEE and some other stormwater opportunities, some grants and such that they were not awarded. I think maybe one of them reached out to DDOT. And we are always looking for opportunities to increase our urban canopy, tree canopy coverage within the district, of course. There's some other agency goals with that in mind. But so we took this on. We have, it's an appropriate project for us. We have the means to do this contractually in place. We have a couple of contracts that we use around the city to remove paving, sidewalk paving and such like that, to create new plantable tree spaces. So we worked with the bid to kind of get a feel for what the vision was. And this came also as part of there was an offset planning. I apologize, I don't remember what the study was called, but basically for energizing and livening up this plaza space that you pointed out. This, as you can see in the plan view, on the bottom right is Columbia Road, and on the left there is Adams Mill. So up on the drawing is north, and this is at the corner of the BB&T Bank, which I believe has been bought as renaming. There's the kiosk at the corner, the information kiosk. So we worked with the bid to kind of get a feel for what they wanted to see happen here, what some of the other input was. And we also met in the field with Brian and Kristen and with Pepco. The reason we met with Pepco is because they have recently installed a large vault there, which you can see in the plan. It's kind of close to the corner near the kiosk. And I think that was part of some neighborhood-wide upgrades. So there's duct bank that's pulling conduit through there. And so we worked with them to try to get a feel for what is underground, what we need to dodge, so to speak. And the plan you see in front of you is what came as a result of that. So our proposal is to add 5 trees. And you can stay on the plan for now, it's fun. 5 trees in the plan view there. And those are those, yeah, you're pointing them out. There's in kind of an offset grid. And the point is to add some shade, some canopy, to bring the scale down to be more pedestrian in scale by giving you a little bit of a ceiling on top. And then on the edges, one of the things we wanted to do was, I've worked with our capital bike share group that is managed within DDOT. So the current location of the bike share is, it's a little bit awkward. It's kind of tucked back in the corner of the plaza. And they agree, they are all on board with shifting it out to that other red bar, which is parallel to Columbia Road. And there's a few good things about that. One is that it will give them the opportunity to expand it by 1, maybe 2 bays, which literally just results in more bikes. And they are aware of a need for that. So that red, big, long shape there is representative of what the bike share pad could take up. And the other benefit of that is that it helps prevent pedestrians from running around that corner, crossing the corner of Columbia Road outside of the painted crosswalk, which is a little bit unsafe. So we see an opportunity there to move the bike share over. We can expand the bike share. And then between the bike share and the curb, we think we can remove some more paving and do some, probably not a tree there because there's a stoplight, but we can do some understory planting there. And then we think, yeah, Japer is pointing them out. We think we can do 2 new street trees. One that's sort of on the fringe on the right on Columbia Road, and one that's getting closer to the bus stop there, the existing bus stop on Adams Mill. So we can create 2 new tree spaces, and in plan view there, 5 new spaces for plaza trees. And if you go to the next page now, you'll see here's what the plaza looks like now. There's the bike share station on the right. You can see a couple manholes on the left there. That's the Pepco. There's a duct bank that runs through there, and I think there's a transformer down in there. So that middle space right there is what we see as an opportunity. And in the background, there is some of the older, larger street trees. And some of you probably remember this actually used to be a slip lane through here. When you were driving southwest on Columbia Road, you could make a right to come through here, but it's now been given back to the people. So if you go down to the next page, this is our really quick sketch on it. The idea for us is to use the existing scoring that is in the plaza within the exposed aggregate sidewalk there. And to pick up on that, what we would do is we would saw cut where the scoring is. So that lighter beige color, those big squares, are about 3 panels by 3 panels within the existing scoring. We would saw cut, remove the paving, and then within there, we would put some new soil in, and then fill that in with new soil. And then there's that darker brown would remain open, so to speak, to the air. That would be just mulch, and that's where the tree would grow out of. So there would be a little bit loss of sort of walkable paving space because you wouldn't walk as much on those darker brown squares, which would be mulched. But the lighter beige color, we can put back in as a porous rubber paving in an aggregate to match the exposed aggregate sidewalk, but it would be porous, so stormwater would flow through it. And it's advantageous to the trees to establish and to grow because of the water and air that can go through it to the rootable soil below. So there's a couple little pictures down on the bottom there. We were thinking of using some single stem crepe myrtles We have chosen those trees because crepe myrtles are just super resilient. They're really beneficial to growing in a situation like this, which is hot. Gets stepped on. It gets not a lot of water. Crepe myrtles are really resilient. So there are some other larger trees which we would love to use in other locations, but for this, crepe myrtles are a pretty appropriate one. They're good fighters, and they're used to taking on the urban stress that a planting like this is asking of them to thrive in. That's the gist of it. We've been working with the bid to get this far, as well as with Office of Planning a bit. I mentioned in the beginning, we vetted this through PEPCO internally with our Capital Bike Share group. And we have all of the contracting in place to do all of the work ourselves through a mix of a couple of contractors. And what we would do is, we had originally planned on doing this in the spring. Obviously things have changed within the city and globally, unfortunately. So we're hoping that we could get to this in the fall. Everything will still be there contractually to make that happen. And if the city is, if we're back open, so to speak, we think we can move forward with this. So we wanted to get in front of the ANC to get all of your acceptance and approval on this, because we want to move forward with, we don't want to move forward without the community behind it, because it is for the community and you will be the users of it. So we want you all to get behind it and to embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. So I did see a question coming in from a member of the public. So please, members of the public, please continue to throw in the questions on chat or raise your hand. But first I want to turn to commissioners. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I would like to speak on this. I am in favor of, I'm in favor of this. I think this is great. First, this is my single member district. And as most residents and neighbors know, in the summertime, this plaza area is just brutal. It is very, very hot. It is not something that residents want to stay in and congregate or use their dollars with. It's used a few times for, I don't even think the bid uses it currently. So it's just random events that happen there. And I think if we're able to add trees and add this shade and canopy, more people would want to use and activate this space. And I'm very much in favor of more pedestrian space for folks. We live in the densest part of the city, Ward 1, and more park space and shade space I think is great. I did receive today a few concerns from neighboring properties, and I think it would be advantageous of us to hold off on a resolution in support of this proposal just right now. That way we can speak to the abutting property owners to give them assurances. I know that some are concerns that those that have property on the second floor, that these trees would block the view of the residents that would be living there, as well as the trees blocking the view from the street of the folks, of the businesses that are there. So I do think that those are, duly noted. However, I think that there's also an argument to be made that if we create more open space and more area for people to congregate, that those businesses would also be able to have a revenue stream from this open space and open area. So I right now would be in favor of this, but again, I want to postpone a full resolution until June. By that time, I think we would be able to have enough support from the property owners and have heard their concerns. And that's really all I have to say about the project. Thank you for putting your time into this, and thank you, the bid, for spearheading this effort. I definitely pushed this really, really hard. So I'm glad that we're able to get something done with this open area. Thank you.
Commissioner Bowles. Other commissioners?
Mr. Balk, I'm pleased to see all those trees. I do have a concern about the way the new bike stations extend almost to the corner of Columbia Road. Yes, I think it's prudent to encourage people to use the crosswalks, but to reach the crosswalk, the way the layout looks now, it seems as though people would have to make virtually a right angle turn, make a left turn if they wanted to come down the hill on Columbia Road and then cross to get over to the McDonald's. And I think shortening the bike lane a bit, the bike parking area, and even shortening the green space a bit would make it easier for people to reach the crosswalk, not at a sharp right angle, but more of a slant. And we'll avoid some aggravation if we can give the pedestrians just a little more flexibility for how they get to the crosswalk. Was that clear?
Yeah, that's definitely clear. And I would, so the Capital Bike Share Group within DDOT did a test fit, because what they need to do, it's a little hard to tell in the plan, but they literally need to thread the needle of the pad between the two manholes that are sort of adjacent to Columbia Road right there. Yeah, you can see them there. Japer's highlighting them. So I think you're right in that it probably doesn't need to extend that far. That was my quick gesture on it. And it would be up to that bike share group to figure out, because the bike share stations, the pads come in sort of regular lengths. So they may only be able to add one more extension, which I think is like 6 more bikes. And so it may actually be a lot less long, less in length than what I'm showing here in the end, because they may only want to do, say, 1 extension.
And I suggest you also reconsider the green space. Otherwise, pedestrians are just going to trample over those poor plants at the end of your green space.
Yeah, you're right. I think we would want to reflect to sort of parallel however far the Capital Bike Share Group wants to go.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Questions from other commissioners?
Yeah, I had just, I'm not sure what I'm seeing in question. The bike share itself, the bikes will be coming back toward the building from the red line?
That's correct.
How much space will there be left for pedestrians once you have the bikes in place?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the pad that basically the front tire mounts in is 3 feet wide, and that's representative by the red shape that I have there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bike extends another 3 feet past that.
So that would be double. So then,
Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah.
But they have gone out there and done all of their measuring to make sure, because they have their own guidelines for clearance, like you're worried about. But again, I do think that it probably will not extend as far as I've shown it towards the intersection of Adams Mill. But they did do a test fit and said that there's plenty of space for the bikes and the operation of pulling in and pulling out a bike as you rent it, to allow for people to still move behind them. But when a bike is parked, it sticks out 3 feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what we had a constituent who weighed in by email earlier today about the plan with concerns about restrictions on the amount of space that's left for pedestrians. And that does tend to be a pretty heavily used pedestrian path up Columbia Road. I am thrilled aesthetically that the Capital Bike Share would be moved, because where it currently is just grates on me aesthetically and always has. And this does look like a slightly better spot, but was wondering whether it could be cheated a little more toward the traffic in order to provide more pedestrian passageway sort of behind it between the buildings.
Yeah. Well, if you mean towards traffic by pushing it towards the Columbia Road curb, it cannot because of the pad.
Oh, because of those two manholes that
Yeah,
okay.
Correct. It cannot sit on top of a manhole, so it has to thread the needle between those two.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
The only other comment that I was thinking of was the crepe, the idea of crepe myrtles. Our experience with plantings that happen on district property has been that frequently a good plan is come up with for installation, and then adequate maintenance never happens. And crepe myrtles seem to be fairly labor intensive in order to keep them single stem and to keep them within appropriate bounds. And I'm questioning the use of crepe myrtles because the district historically has done such a bad job of maintaining them elsewhere in the neighborhood, particularly in Colorama Park.
So specifically about single stem crepe myrtles, they are a little unique because their natural habitat is multi-stem. The problem with that in a situation like this, or in others, of course, is that then you've got branches coming out where your head is when you're walking, right? So we're choosing a single stem. And when you get a single stem crepe myrtle, most of the work has already been done in terms of an arboriculture practice to get them to single stem. From there, it's actually a very little pruning that's done to keep them. So I'm a little surprised. One of the reasons we like them is because they are so hardy and require so little. So maybe some of the ones that are in parks that you're seeing are, I don't know, maybe a little more unruly, but this is a good selection in our mind because they are so hardy and require so much less, actually.
Well, surprisingly, they put in an entire U shape of them at the south end of Colorama Park that died from lack of appropriate watering and maintenance. And that was, within the last probably 6 years. The other string that goes along the sidewalk in the park is not what you're talking about with the single stem. It's one that's the multi-stem, but it gets suckers that come out all the time. And are you telling me that there will be absolutely no suckers coming out below on the crepe myrtles?
Well, what I'm telling you is I can't guarantee that, but I can tell you that our arborists are very responsive with 311s and with tree care. So trees that are our trees, street trees, and these would be maintained by us, we will definitely take care of these.
Okay.
Maintenance, it would be with you folks and not DPR.
Not hearing you.
Would the maintenance would be with you folks and it wouldn't be with DPR?
Yeah, that's correct. This is considered DDOT public right of way. And so we would take these on as part of our library of street trees and we would maintain them.
Very good. Other commissioners, questions before we turn it over to the public?
It's more of a comment, but I think this looks really nice. It's not my SMD. I leave that up to Japer to work with the constituents, but I think this looks like a nice addition.
My only question would be, it would be nice to see a rendering that showed sort of the view on the street, including the kiosk, just to get some sense of how it relates. If we had something done in that was like the second view, only taken from basically looking from the intersection, so that you'd see how the trees relate to the kiosk.
Yeah, yeah. I think also when we don't have that view, it's hard to see, or it's hard to really get some kind of perspective into how much space will be left over. Right now, one of the nice things is that there is open space and there's space for people to gather and to have a farmer's market or to walk past each other in a socially distant kind of way, which I think is going to be with us for some time.
Well, let me point out that it is a little hard to tell contextually where the kiosk is. You can see it in the plan view, but it's still a ways off to the left there on the one that's on the screen. And we have intentionally moved all of the planting, this proposal, way to the other side of the Pepco vault there, so that the trees are not near the kiosk. Everyone within the bid agreed and wanted to have the kiosk sort of stand on its own as a moment out there on the corner. And the other thing I want to point out is that I'm getting a sense that there's some concern about like the loss of pedestrian movement through here. And I want to point out that that little brown square at the base of the tree that the tree is growing out of is about 3.5 feet by 3.5 feet. So it's very small. Everything else is still walkable, and you'll be able to walk under the trees and sit under the trees. And unfortunately, I don't have it, but this was presented to us by the bid as a part of the study that Office of Planning did for the activation of this space. And their plan here showed large trees, movable furniture, lighting, music, tables. So a lot of that stuff can still happen. It would just happen underneath the shade of the trees.
And off in the next to the kiosk, what are those? Are those existing lights?
Yeah, those big yellow circles.
Yeah.
Those are the, so one of the things we have is we have a 15-foot minimum offset requirement for trees from lights. And so, yeah, that's representative of a 15-foot radius from the existing lights at the corners.
Okay. I'm seeing this both on my phone and on Japer's.
There, Japer's got it up there, so you can.
Yeah, so it's the Adams Morgan Vision Framework, and this is what previous plans were. So I can zoom in on it for folks, and then this is what it was, and then this is not the current proposal, but. Ooh.
Okay, let's. So I think there's been some concern expressed by commissioners that overall, the trees are lovely. We're thrilled to see improvements at BB&T Plaza or Truist Plaza, whatever it's going to be renamed. But there's some concern around pedestrian, the pathway. Is it going to be wide enough? And of course, it being an open space for gatherings like farmers markets, that's also a concern. And especially with this bike share station that's there, it's going to make this area pretty narrow to come down off of Columbia Road for pedestrians. Let's get to members of the public. I'll start with Zach.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions that build on comments that commissioners have made. One is that I think it is important to understand what the bid's plan is for this space right now. Without trees in that area during the summer and spring, there are concerts and puppet performances and little things that are going on there where a crowd can gather. It's unclear from this rendering how a crowd can gather here, and I'm wondering if what the bid's plan for that space is. Another pedestrian issue that hasn't been brought up by the commissioners is that I'm wondering if, while I appreciate your discussion with the bike share team, if you've had any discussions with the DDOT Vision Zero team. It is my understanding that there's a plan for Adams Morgan to look at this intersection, given how wide the intersection is and how far pedestrians have to cross from one side to the other, that there's a plan to actually widen the sidewalks and constrict the intersection. And I think that having a bike share and green spaces and trees along the street space seem to preclude the ability for that to happen. And so I want to make sure that we're considering all of DDOT's plans at once and not just individual plans as they impact one space. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
I can speak to, so I've vetted this internally with DDOT a bit, but I will reach out specifically to the planners for this area for the Vision Zero and double check if there's anything planned for the intersection for curb bulb outs or anything else like you were talking about.
Thank you, Aleph, and thank you, Zach, for raising that good point. Coming in from the phone, ending in 411. Go ahead.
This is Dennis James.
Mr. James.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to start by wishing everybody the best possible outcomes and staying healthy throughout this incredible time. But now I need to address this. There's so many questions about this BB&T Plaza so-called plan. But the first one is that this is one of our two central public spaces in the neighborhood. The other one, this is truly public space. It's not the bid space. And, DDOT controls it, but it should always be looking out for the public good. And I'll get to why, my criticisms about that in a moment. Across the way, diagonally, is the Suntrust Plaza. And the Colorama Citizens Association, of which I'm president, is in court, and it's likely that a decision will be issued soon as to whether or not there's a public easement on that property. And if that is found to be the case, then it seems more guaranteed that we will have that space, at least part of it, depending on how the decision reads, to be used ongoing for the farmers market and the other kinds of events that happen there. But it doesn't preclude development on 75% of the rest of that lot. So it's conceivable that a judge might find a public easement and say, well, it's only this much. And therefore a quite large building could be built by parties unknown or the original developers who were trying to do something. But anyway, it seems like a bad time to lay out concrete changes to the other plaza that we have when, a decision is forthcoming, probably quite soon, on the other large plaza. But to get to the merits or lack thereof of this plan, it's been totally hidden from the public, the bid in its way of not letting anybody know what it's doing, but getting with DDOT and getting to the point of having something like this put together with not one person in the public knowing anything about it until it was revealed in a very minor way a couple of months ago. And then these plans were put on the ANC website. And just as an indication of how few people know about this, I don't know how many people are on Zoom, but there's 2 people on the YouTube watching this right now. And these are very difficult times for participation. But to get right down to the particulars, these are not good shade trees. There's too many of them. You've got a really nice scarlet oak there. I would suggest putting a couple of more scarlet oaks or perhaps some elm, like Princeton elm or something there, a real shade tree, and have them be in a sort of a line fairly close to the existing bike share. So perhaps the row of 2 that you show on the plans, there's a row of 2 new circles which indicate a tree, and then a row of 3. I would not have the 3. I would just go with 2 and space them in such a way that when they became mature, it would make a nice shady area with lots of ability to have the benefits of the shade in that area. I would not move the Capital Bike Share rack at all. You're stealing the public's right of way on the sidewalk. My understanding is from the written materials that came with these plans is that the turn lane would be constricted. We need that turn lane there. It's where the circulator bus makes a very tough turn. And others can use it when the circulator bus is not around, but the idea of narrowing that part of the sidewalk down is just ridiculous. The city's growing, more people are walking. You need to leave someplace for them to walk. Also, just crowding up the space because you can draw circles on a piece of paper and make it look like something, you don't want to crowd it up. That eliminates its flexibility to have different kinds of events take place there. And the bid doesn't have any particular control of that space. They have to apply for a permit, like when they've had their concert series there in past years, which has been a pleasant thing to have. Lots of people like it. But, it's kind of hard to know if that would be able to take place with this going on. Anyway,
Okay.
Those are a lot of my concerns, but I really think DDOT needs to be held to task. Like, what are you doing, DDOT? Entering into private discussions with the bid. And many of the bid members already have cordoned off some of the public space, the sidewalk cafes throughout the neighborhood. There's probably like 60 of them. So this wouldn't particularly benefit any one business per se. This would be for the benefit of the public, the 17,000 or so residents of Adams Morgan. I said what I want to say right now, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. James. Some good points there as well. And I also want to point out that there's a message came through about 15 minutes ago from the owner of the BB&T building. And they had, if the other commissioners can see this, I'll just read this aloud, that they had only found out about this plan at about 3 p.m. today. I think as part of this public process, this is one of the first steps. So we need to socialize this. We need more people to give their feedback. More of the 17, 18, 20,000, however many residents there are in Adams Morgan need to be able to see this. And, for an abutting property owner, the BB&T building, to only see it at 3 p.m. today, I think this, it has a bit of a way to go to get this plan socialized. And one of the concerns that the owner of the BB&T building had was that there's going to be leaves falling there that could create a fire hazard against their building, and that the eating area that the bid has plans for that plaza will generate trash and vermin. So, Alit, that, we can compile these questions too, of course, and we'll provide them to you and as part of this iterative process. But I just want to set some expectations that it will take some time to get this thing socialized. But moving on to Mr. Wexler, go ahead, you have it.
Thanks, Samir. And thanks for those comments. I want to first echo many, if not most, of Zach's and Dennis's prior thoughtful comments and items of feedback. I personally have a number of concerns about this plan, and I'm also quite disturbed that the bid did not seek any input whatsoever from the adjacent property owners adjacent to BB&T Plaza. Those two adjacent property owners, both of whom are members of the new Adams Morgan Commercial Development Coalition, are of the BB&T building, as well as the building where Southern Hospitality used to be. And they've raised several important questions, not just about the process, but about what's being proposed. And I want to read a few sections of the messages that were emailed today by those two property owners. Amir referred to the owner of the BB&T building. He was, as he put it, mildly surprised that these planned improvements, in quotes, that have a major impact on my property have been proceeding for an extended period of time without notice to or input from me. My guess is that notice and opportunity to comment was not provided to my tenant BB&T either. I learned about the plan for the first time no more than a few hours ago. While I am in favor of improvements to the specific area, I have major concerns about aspects of the plan and think that the plan is contrary to some of the stated goals. I am particularly concerned that planting trees will significantly impede the use of the space for public gathering purposes like the farmers market. Next, going to read a portion of an email from Lou Corumbus, who, like me, also served on the board of the Adams Morgan bid for a number of years. I brought to Lou's attention that the BB&T Plaza improvements were on the agenda for this evening's ANC meeting. Lou wrote that he can't join the meeting this evening, but he asked me to share his general sentiment regarding the project. And he writes, namely, as one of the directly abutting property owners, my property will be significantly impaired by the proposed improvements in that visibility and signage will be significantly impaired. I also have concerns regarding safety, as the plantings will create dark recesses around my building and the BB&T ATM on Adams Mill Road. Nearby Unity Park, he writes, also already provides a shaded gathering place of similar size. And if the Suntrust Plaza is renovated, BB&T Plaza will be the only unobstructed gathering place near the intersection of 18th and Columbia Road. In March, after this plan was proposed and I saw it for the first time, I voiced my concerns to the bid, but I don't feel like I was heard. I'm not fundamentally opposed to improving the plaza, but I think the abutting properties should have much more involvement in the process. That's from Lou. I'll add that my own personal concern is that this plan may prevent activation of the space for farmers market style business when the community should be giving primary consideration for how to help neighborhood friendly businesses as we come out of the pandemic. And so everyone knows I participated very intimately as a member of the Adams Morgan Vision Framework, as I know Dennis did, and perhaps a couple of others who are also on this call or in this meeting. But I believe we should pause this specific effort and think more holistically, as a couple of people have already mentioned, about how we want to activate both this and other public spaces post-coronavirus. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, how you guys doing? I'm Joe. I'm one of the co-owners of Songbird Music House, just, you know, couple doors down across the street. And thank you all for everything that y'all are doing. There's not many upsides to what's going on right now, but one of them is I get to watch this and I have a little more time to look at some of these things. And I had asked a couple questions. Honestly, I had never seen this before either, but my couple questions that I asked in the chat had mostly been answered in subsequent comments about what it means for gathering and the adjacent property owners, just because that's what struck me when I looked at it. So most of that's been addressed. I guess the only other thing I would sort of add on top of that potentially is, you know, this extra layer of what's going on in the world right now with respect to small and local businesses. And I just think I'd be curious on thoughts, comments, feedback, whatever, about how that overlay or lens is considered with respect to this as a, you know, as a primary flagship corner on 18th and Columbia. And, you know, people touched on the adjacent property owners, but again, and however we balance the use of all these spaces, it would be interesting to at least see and hear and think that people are considering the impacts to the properties and the surrounding public space as they relate to, you know, future business, current business. I mean, I know there's been a couple of you know, reasonably good food and beverage bar establishments, most recently Southern Hospitality, that's now gone. I hope that will be repopulated at some point in the future. And I have no clue what's going to happen with BB&T. I mean, they've merged now, and I'm sure locations could be getting shuttered. Who knows? We don't know. And I just, you know, as an additional factor in these discussions, I think about a prominent corner in Adams Morgan and how that overlay is considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have other comments? Any other raised hands here? We'll get over to some of the questions we saw in the chat, and also just in general, I think it would be good, Aleph, if you can tell us the process that you've gone through to come to the point where we are today.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think I mentioned it a bit in the beginning, but our role within urban forestry on this was the bid approached us as looking for an opportunity to do a planting opportunity here. And so that's really the extent of our contractual feasibility. We can remove paving and create tree spaces. That's really what we thrive at. And that's something that we wanted to offer up to the bid here. So the process has really just been with the bid. They reached out to us, and we've had several iterations of design and constraints and feedback from them on what they felt was appropriate for this space. And then once we reached this concept that you're seeing in front of the ANC for presentation today, we did express that we wanted the bid to kind of take the reins to chaperone the community outreach of this, because it's DDOT's practice to not go into something like this into the public realm without getting full community outreach and their approval. And so it was our understanding that the bid could share this with the ANC and then put it in the docket. And I offered up to come tonight to kind of just answer any questions and throw it all out there. So we are completely receptive to what you all decide, what the community decides they want to see out there. And if this is not appropriate, then that's totally acceptable. So that's why we're here tonight. This is part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you for working on this, and we want to improve the plaza. We just want it to be an iterative process that involves the community and the residents as well. When did you start work? Just out of curiosity, when did you start? How many months in are we? How many iterations has gone through?
It's only gone through about 2. There's been a lot of trying to figure out what's out there, because it's always really hard to figure out what is underground. And so there was a bit of a delay with getting some feedback from Pepco, scheduling a field site meeting with Pepco, and then they had to dig into their records for what was installed underneath the plaza. So once we got through that, we had a couple iterations with the bid, but it's, I don't know, it's been a few months, but admittedly, I've been part of the delay. My standard role within DDOT is I work within DDOT, the infrastructure project management delivery teams. So that's all of the public streetscape projects. I usually work on all of those. This is sort of just a project we saw as an opportunity to use our pavement removal contract to increase canopy within the district.
Okay. Well, it's a good starting point for us, and I'm glad we're here where we are right now. Commissioner Bowles, do you have something?
I just wanted to point out that this is definitely a good starting point. And I do think that we can come to a consensus with all of the different stakeholders. The bid definitely did lead on this, but I did receive a few emails from Kristen and Brian that were like, hey, we're looking to do this. And again, this is something that residents of Linear Place, residents all throughout my single member district have expressed concern. And I'm glad that they are at least putting forth some proposal. And it sounds like there's an opportunity for us to make some slight tweaks, and to figure out specifics. I would definitely like some design showing what the capital share bike rack would look like. I would like to see what it would look like from a different view from the Adams Mill side. And I think that we are able to do that. And if anyone has any questions or further comments or anything, please feel free to direct them to me. I can take the lead on the ANC's portion of this. And if anyone else would like to step in as well. But yeah, this is something that I've heard from residents. I was glad that the bid did most of the work on this. And I'm really glad that Elite has taken his time. He's a professional. I'm really glad that he's out here listening to community concerns. And it seems like hopefully we'll be able to put that proposal into fruition and turn this unused space into usable space for the neighbors. So thank you for that, Elite.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowles. And for everyone, you can find all of our contact info at anc1c.org, and Commissioner Bowles is 1c07@anc.dc.gov. Commissioner Guthrie, please.
Yeah, I just was having a thought about this space, and I understand that there are significant restrictions on what can and can't be done due to existing infrastructure. And the fact that we have a minimal budget that is limited to certain work that can be done through this particular portion of DDOT. I get all that. As I'm looking at the space, I was reminded of that space in Mount Pleasant, where they have put out what are fairly lightweight red metal chairs and tables in the raised part of that sort of central triangle park that they have in Mount Pleasant, that seem to have actually survived and not been taken off by people, that would at least provide a little more activating in that space. If we could figure out a way to get them paid for, I don't think they'd be that expensive, but they would provide a little more sense of space. That's sort of what I think the community is looking for, rather than just a, plop in some trees in a way that actually we can do given limitations of the site. So I'd like to have that be something that people at least think about as a possibility.
Thank you, Commissioner Guthrie. Good points. Other comments from commissioners or members of the public? Okay, so Alec, we've, I've taken some extensive notes here. We've also received questions and emails all in the lead up to the meeting tonight. Thank you very much for coming out and for working on this. And like I said, this is a great starting point. It's a good place to start to receive feedback, of which we've received plenty tonight. So I think Commissioner Bowles, myself, and anyone else interested from the commission will also be in touch after the meeting and provide you with a list of this feedback, and let's work on the next steps.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, everyone. And our primary contact has all been through the bid with Brian and Kristen. So I'll just look for your all emails and just include anyone and all that you want in the process.
Okay, sounds perfect. Thank you again for coming tonight. So moving to the ABC and Public Safety Committee agenda, we have a substantial change of an existing ABC license on 18th Street, The Game / Tiki on 18th Street. It's at 2411 18th Street. And my understanding is that they would like to add an entertainment endorsement with a cover charge. Commissioner Guthrie, do you want to speak any words about this?
You want to unmute?
Mute myself. There I go. Okay. Sorry. I have not been directly involved in the negotiations on this, but it's my understanding that in discussions between neighborhood association, the ANC, and the owner of the establishment, that there hasn't been an ability to come to an agreement along the lines of the settlement agreements that we normally execute whenever there's any sort of request for additional permissions under a license, so that we can move forward in a way that feels safe for the community, as well as allows appropriate relief to the particular licensee. We're in a strange situation now because ABRA is incrementally pushing protest dates back, but the current existing protest date for this particular application is the 1st of June, and we won't be meeting again until the 4th of June. So we need to put a protest in at this meeting if we're going to protest this request for additional permissions. It's my personal belief that we need to do that to move forward as and have a seat at the table to determine the scope and parameter of whatever additional permission is granted. I would move that ANC 1C protest the application for a substantial change of circumstance, that on the basis of adverse impact on peace, order, and quiet in the neighborhood, and that any commissioner be authorized to appear on behalf of the ANC at any hearing or other required meeting on this matter.
I second the motion.
Any discussion from commissioners about the motion to protest the licensee in order to have more time to reach a settlement agreement?
I would like to be clear that although I'm not participating actively in the negotiations on this particular license, I think it's important that we maintain our seat at the table in order to fashion an agreement that is both fair to the community and to the applicant. I know that all of our licensees are in a really challenging, difficult economic situation, especially during this closure, that I can't even begin to see how many of them are going to make it back out. And I'm not suggesting that we do this on the basis that we're going to be precluding them from doing something that is a reasonable and non-invasive activity in the neighborhood. I personally think that the initial suggestion for being able to charge a cover charge for certain athletic events that the licensee would be charged to show makes total sense. I get that. Some of the other things that they were requesting that would be included in that, I don't think are really appropriate for this location. So I think we need to continue our place at the table by protesting it.
Thank you, Commissioner Guthrie. I see a couple of hands. Mr. James, go ahead, you're on.
Was that, I'm sorry, I was typing. Was that Dennis James?
That's you. You're on.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, actually, my hand was raised because I wanted to say something else about the previous thing, which I will not, the previous agenda item, which I won't do, but I'm sending an email to the commissioners. I second what Commissioner Guthrie said to a large extent. I mean, I do think that, you know, it's going to be a changed world in the ABC community in Adams Morgan. It's going to be a very difficult landscape, and numerous places probably will fail, sadly. And the timing of this isn't great in that it makes it harder to do what we normally do, like go in to the establishment and see the changes that they've made and chat in a, you know, in a helpful way, I think, all things considered. You know, so we're doing the best that we can. It's conceivable that we'll get to a settlement agreement, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a quick outcome. So it might very well take you past June 1st. That's pretty much what I would like to say on this. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Wexler, go ahead. You're on.
Thank you. And Ted and Dennis, thank you for saying what you said. You know, this is just devastating to Oscar and everybody like Oscar, who has every dollar that he made in this
owner
place.
of the establishment, Oscar.
The owner of the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, this restaurant, you know, was really well reviewed in the Post about a year ago as a, you know, kind of a new type of sports bar, you know, serving, you know, really interesting Filipino food. I would just ask you guys to consider however we can today to expedite, you know, whatever agreement you can get done with him so that he's got a chance of surviving. So many of these places aren't going to make it. And it's incumbent upon all of us to think about what we can do to help them. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Matt. Are there comments from anyone on the commission before we move to a vote?
Yeah, I just want to echo, you know, what Matt said, and I think it's important that we have a seat at the table, and protesting this is part of that. And I just hope that the ABC committee, you know, really is thinking about all that we can do to support the businesses, and maybe taking some of our normal complaints about noise and crowds and, you know, thinking about how we can support the business right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I think we do want to reach a settlement agreement, and we want to reach it. We just want a seat at the table to be able to negotiate. But yeah, we're certainly, we have, you know, we're all in this together, and we can't have any of our small businesses shouldering all this burden. So I agree. So any other comments before we call to a vote? All those in favor of the motion to protest as indicated by Commissioner Guthrie, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Any abstentions?
Aye. Abstain.
Passes 6-0 to 1.
5-0. 5-0. 5-0 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I'm counting. Not 6. There's only 6 of us.
Oh yeah,
total.
there is. Yeah. There's only. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Guthrie. Moving on to the Pzt Committee Agenda. We have a resolution to expand the sidewalks in Adams Morgan to facilitate social distancing. This comes from Mayor Bowser's call to residents and bids, ANCs to provide DDOT with locations where there isn't sufficient width the sidewalk to practice proper social distancing. And this is meant to be around essential businesses. So it's not meant to expand the sidewalks in a way where people can congregate or for non-essential activities. It's meant to be able to get to the grocery store or the hardware store or somewhere else that's essential in a socially distant way. So Commissioner Bowles, you put together a pretty thorough resolution. Would you like to take the mic here?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share the screen to look at the resolution that was proposed. Okay, so I guess a little bit of background on this. What I have proposed, there's numerous resolves in this resolution, and essentially what that means is there's numerous recommendations to DDOT, but also to ourselves, to the ANC, requiring the ANC to do certain things. And essentially what this is a plan to tell residents within Adams Morgan and Ward 1 and throughout the entire district that there is a route for you to go to all of your essential and get all of your essential goods and be safe, whether that be from vehicular traffic, but also while abiding by physical distancing guidelines. And I have taken it upon myself and used other recommendations from folks who have sent in emails or responded via Twitter as to highlight specific sidewalks that I think that we could expand that would essentially allow folks to walk freely. And I can, from essential service to essential service. So if we'd like, Walter Springman is doing some comments right now as we see. Let me do one thing really quickly. So we can read it without someone. As you can see, we're still taking comments. Okay, so the first whereas discusses we're at a stay-at-home order. We need to go through, but we still have to go and partake in essential services. Mayor Bowser announced a sidewalk extension plan. This is essentially a program that bids and ANCs can ask to, come on thing, move, to suggest specific extensions. There's a few of them all throughout DC, but essentially their main point is to provide extended sidewalks near grocery stores and other essential retailers, and to allow pedestrians enough space to practice social distancing through the coronavirus. So the next points out that just since January, we've pretty much passed one resolution related to pedestrian safety, a meeting. So it's something that typically falls within our wheelhouse. And that we have a lot of essential services within Adams Morgan, and most of those services are such as pharmacies, healthcare facilities, grocery stores. They're located on the main business corridor on Columbia Road, and our grocery store and as well as a healthcare facility are also located on Colorama Road in the Reed Cook neighborhood. I would also like to point out that what is good about Adams Morgan, at least in some spaces, is that Colorama Road already has adequate space for most folks to walk and go from essential service to essential service using the physical distancing guidelines. However, I have pointed out some specific linchpins, essentially where it is more narrow. I will also point out that Colorama Road, at least on the eastern side of 18th Street, that street is very narrow. It's heavily traveled by residents who are trying to get to the Harris Teeter there. And from personal experience, and we can also ask DDOT for the data behind it, but there appears to be metered parking that is underutilized that would be easily available to convert into sidewalk expansions. So the main point of this was to create an Adams Morgan Healthy Streets loop. This is an idea that I got from Minneapolis, of all places. And essentially it provides folks with the safety and the guarantee to go from essential service to essential service, but also connect folks to other corridors, as well as other places where they could practice physical distancing at safe distances. So if you look at the routes that I've proposed here, it essentially follows Columbia Road all the way up to 16th Street. It cuts down 16th Street, and then you take a right and head west on Colorama. You continue west on Colorama and head south on that one little breakout on Champlain, and then get right back out on Colorama to cross 18th Street and follow Colorama all the way up until Columbia Road again. So that is the main loop. This is something that I think it would be crucial if we were able to market, advertise, tell residents, hey, anywhere on these streets, you will be guaranteed to be safe and have social distancing. To go back to the resolution, to make this specifics, this is really what DDOT would be looking at as, okay, we like your loop, that's great, you can do that, but what sidewalks do you need to expand? And I have identified a few sidewalks that I think that we could expand that would essentially make this loop vision a reality. But in addition, most of these sidewalks are near grocery stores and or are near grocery stores and healthcare facilities. They fit within all of the different guidelines that DDOT would require to have these sidewalks removed. So it's not going to be a purely residential street. So the west side, the west part of Colorama Road of 18th Street, none of that parking would be removed. However, there are some sidewalks that I think should be expanded, and I've identified them here, but I also have an appendix further down that I think it would be helpful to show. So again, here's the Adams Morgan Healthy Street Loop. The green shows the different healthcare providers. The blue points out routes to go to different open spaces. So this Query Road, I don't know how many folks know, but off of Lanier Place, there is a staircase that follows right with Query Road. Taking this road and the staircase would allow you to get onto the Rock Creek Parkway in a social distancing or a physical distancing manner. And so we want to highlight that to folks as well. And the same thing for the Malcolm X Park, and then also pointing out that Calvert would be a street that would have sidewalk space. So you can get to Walter Pierce Park and you can get to the Woodley Park Metro Station. This also points out and goes towards 16th Street, which does, as the next show that the widths of sidewalks. So as we'll point out here, a lot of the routes, red is narrow sidewalk as it relates to the business and DDOT property. And the greener and bluer the color, the more expansive the sidewalk is. And this is also a website that folks can use all throughout DC. This is just a screenshot that I pulled specifically for the loop. But essentially what this is to do, my sidewalk extension provisions are, if you look and can envision where the loop would be, is to ask, hey, this is a narrow sidewalk. This is near essential services. We're asking for the sidewalk extension. So the first one that I'm asking for is the 1700 block of Columbia Road. As you can tell, this is very much the intersection that we just spoke about relating to the trees. My specific suggestion is to ask for DDOT to have and remove the parking from the south sidewalk from Columbia 1796 to 1782, which is essentially this bottom part here, and have that extended for a pedestrian zone. I would also like to have the north side, which is essentially this part here, extended. And this would allow folks traveling on the north side of Columbia Road and the south side of Columbia Road to cross the intersection and not be afraid of coming in too close of contact with folks, and while still abiding by physical distancing. The next proposal I would like to discuss is the north sidewalk from 1733 to 1629. This is essentially the entire north sidewalk from the it's Michaela's district from I'm sorry, that's Champlain in Columbia, that block, and it also has with Query all the way up to 16th. So these are those large apartment buildings, the Argonne, and we've gotten a lot of feedback from folks that are saying, hey, this needs to be opened up. Looking at the Google documents, there definitely are parking spots that could be removed for this, but again, this would be a recommendation to remove parking for expanded pedestrian space on the north side of Columbia. So this is one, I don't think if the biggest car parking suggestion that would remove parking. Gosh, sorry. The next one would be the 1800 block of Columbia Road. So essentially this is, we have the southeast sidewalk, and this is in front of the Norwood, but also gets into the Grill and Streets Marketplace. As you'll notice, Streets, there is a little bit more of a bump out there, but the goal of the loop is to connect essential goods or essential services to essential services. And this additional walk space will really mean a lot into getting folks, from Colorama on up to the rest of the streets. The next part is the north/west side. So this is, I would say, a little bit deceiving. This is where the Yes Organic Market is, as well as from Perry's all the way to Lapis. So here we've gotten a lot of feedback from folks just because this is a heavy used corridor, and there are patios that restaurants are using currently or not using currently, and it's a tighter space there. So this is something that I've heard from folks asking specifically if they could increase the sidewalk. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have thought of that, just looking at the distance between the sidewalks. But folks are saying, they're going into the grocery stores, they're going into the pharmacy there, and they need more space. So the next one would be Colorama Road. And this is the one that I'm most concerned with, and the one that I have the most experiences with. I live on Ontario across from Mary's house, Mary Center. So getting to Harris Teeter, this is my route, and I could send pictures of this. But essentially what I'm calling for is for the north side of the 1600 block of Columbia. So essentially this entire top piece to have extended sidewalks. And then I would like to have the entire block of 1700 Colorama Road. Either I think it would be wise to have the entire road have both options open, so there would be no parking on either side. But I'm also amenable to just having the south side or just the north side. There's not a lot of people parking on these in these meters. And I see so many folks walking up and down this street that, I mean, they're in the middle of the road because they want to have the physical distancing. So I think it would be smart to, think about, these people are going to do it anyway, so why not allow them to be safe? And then that corner there with Colorama, just between the two blocks of Ontario and Champlain, there's actually not a residence on the south side, and the north side, I couldn't get the exact number, but there is parking on the south side of that block. And I think it's about 8 spots maximum. And again, it's a linchpin area. We see a lot of folks that are walking and trying to get to their grocery store. I think I have a big part of this is if we do decide to market and go through with a loop, that it's not just about sidewalk suggestions, but telling people throughout the community that, hey, if you hop on Columbia Road or if you hop on Colorama Road, you're going to be safe because there are physical distancing measures in place for you. However, another part of this is for those areas that don't need the sidewalk bump out. How are they going to know that they're a part of the route? And that is where I would be asking DDOT, as well as taking upon the ANC Commission's ask to provide or inquire about signage. Here's a few different ones. Street for the people, cars are guests here, expanded pedestrian space. I know that DDOT will be working on certain signage, and I'm sure that we would be able to utilize what they already have in this type of plan. So that we already see things like this. This is something similar to what they have. Sorry, the picture is so blurry. And then this is the most preferred physical barrier that I would like. However, I don't see putting concrete barriers in the middle of some of these streets as completely viable. But this is just an example of what could be. And let's see if there's any other. I have my sources here listed. Questions.
So thank you, Commissioner Bowles. Just a couple of questions and one comment about the barrier selection. My understanding is that DDOT will post the signage and will also add the barriers and the emergency no parking signs if they approve one of the areas that we submit for consideration.
Correct.
It's completely up to them, right?
Yeah, totally.
And the other question or comment I had was that the zones that are in the resolution are the areas, the sidewalk extensions that are called out in the resolution, the handful that you have there. Did you consider the DDOT criteria of not being longer than 3 consecutive blocks and mustn't block bus stops and loading zones and the PP?
So I did consult those, and I don't think those specific sidewalk extensions, and I may be wrong, are dinging any of those. The bus route thing, there are no bus routes that we're asking for extensions that would push out. It's on the other side of the street, so the north side of Columbia. I would have to double check on the Colorama Park side for Columbia to double check on that side, but I don't believe it would interfere with buses. Another one of the criteria is, again, they can't be 3 blocks long. The longest the longest section that I have that is requiring sidewalks is 3 blocks long. I guess 2.5 if you consider, I would say 3, because the block on Colorama between Champlain and Ontario, and they also have to be by essential services, in which I believe that though the sidewalk extensions are near essential services.
They're within 1 block. They're either on the same block or within 1 block of the essential services. You've looked at the criteria, and all of these that you've proposed meet that criteria. Is that right?
I believe so. And I mean, again, if anyone would like to ask, or we can go more and thorough with each suggestion. But yeah, I believe they all do fit those parameters.
And I see that we have another question from Commissioner Wright, but I just have one more thing. I heard, or when I'm looking at this list, Wawa, which is open very late, I think it's still the only thing that's open 24 hours. Even 7-Eleven is not 24 hours.
Yeah.
So how come that didn't make this list?
Yeah, so my thought process on this is that I really didn't want to touch 18th Street, mostly because whenever I think of essential services, I think of pharmacies, I think of grocery stores, I think of healthcare facilities. The mayor has defined essential services differently to include, I believe, convenience stores. So there definitely is an argument to be made that there should be one put out in front of Wawa. I am, by all means, I would absolutely accept a sidewalk extension in front of Wawa. It's not a part of my loop plan, but by all means, I think that if we want to guarantee that all of our essential services in Adams Morgan, and the commission feels that that is an essential service, that I think that we should include it and ensure that folks can get to essential services in a safe manner. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'll take a look at the address. Let's take a question from Commissioner Wright.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just want to thank Japer for all the work he's done on this. I think it looks really great and makes a lot of sense. And I heard from probably 15 constituents all about Columbia Road, specifically the area that Japer mentioned towards the north, but also further down towards Lapis and the other more southern parts. And it was all overwhelmingly, we need more space. We don't care about the parking. We need more places to walk so that runners aren't running in the bike lanes or just in the street. And yeah, just echoing what Japer said.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we definitely have some shared sentiments here. Thank you, Commissioner Bowles. Commissioner Guthrie, please.
Okay, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah, a couple of things I would point out, that a number of the places that have been identified for taking out the parking and putting in the sidewalk extensions are in fact adjacent to bus stops along the 42 route. I mean, they just are on both sides of Columbia Road. And there's one that's right at Metromart. There's another one that is, I don't know, part of the block that includes Yes Market. There is bus stop that is, immediately in front of, or beyond the block beyond Safeway. There's one on the other side of the street. I mean, my real problem with this I have 2 problems with this concept. One, I think this resolution is trying to do 2 things that should be segregated. One is address the mayor's sidewalk extension issue, and the other is this more, it's a larger vision. And it's a very interesting concept, sort of like creating a lot more pedestrian friendly areas in Adams Morgan, but it has nothing to do with the sidewalk extension plan that the mayor was requesting feedback on. And unlike Commissioner Bowles and Commissioner Wright, clearly I'm talking to different people. all I heard was people volunteering to me. I heard this was on the agenda. Please don't do this, from people who are pedestrians, older, and actually out on the sidewalk when they're talking to me about this. It may be that there is a way that they can do this that will feel safe for older people to walk in this zoned off space. But frankly, my experience of being out in the neighborhood, and I'm not out that much because we're not supposed to be, but including going down to Harris Teeter, including going up along Columbia Road to Safeway, is that people are really being flexible about how we use our resource, which is the road and the sidewalk. And on the days that there is little or no vehicular traffic, people along Colorama Road are walking along the middle of the street. And if they see a car coming, they move to where the parked cars are until the car passes, and then they come back out in the street. It's not that we need to take a lane of parking in order to have solely used by pedestrians. I mean, I think the people in Adams Morgan are generally being pretty flexible about how we use the space and recognizing how things change from hour to hour as far as the amount of usage that's going on, both pedestrian and vehicular. We have a lot of people who park on the streets. What I'm seeing now is not the usual changeover with a new car parking there within 15 seconds of when the old car leaves. I'm seeing cars that are just sitting there because people aren't driving because we're staying home. Now, how you're going to get parking spaces that are reasonably convenient for all of the people that you're planning to take the parking away from, I don't understand. I'm not a person with a car. I don't have a vested interest in parking on the street, but most of my constituents do, or at least many of them do. And putting all of these spaces as pedestrian only spaces and not allowing the parking and not allowing the flexibility is not something that seems to me a good idea. I have not personally seen substantial amounts of crowds out on the street, and I've been out at different times of day where there may be certain times that you get within 6 feet of people, but generally that doesn't seem to be a problem for most people. We're all adjusting. We're all adults. We know what the rules generally are. I appreciate all the time that Japer put into this, but I think that it will make it a less usable space by dedicating it solely to pedestrian traffic in those lanes. And I don't think it's consistent with the mayor's guidelines in a whole lot of those situations that interfere with bus lanes. So I can't vote for, go along with, approve of this proposal. I would suggest that the idea of the sort of safe circuit is a really interesting idea. It's an interesting marketing concept. I'm not sure that it makes sense from a marketing perspective unless 18th is somehow included in it. But that's, to me, we should be dealing with the mayor's extension rather than the safe streets bigger issue at this point in time. But that's my take on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Guthrie. Commissioner Wright? Sounds like
yeah, I just want to, I mean, I feel like we're in two completely different neighborhoods because I've experienced the exact opposite. I am also not going out very much, but when I do have to run to Harris Teeter or CVS or, you know, maybe to get a bite at Federalist Pig, I'm often walking in the street too. And I don't think it's okay to just say, oh, you know, people, if they don't feel safe on the sidewalks, can walk in the street. To me, like I've got a lot of elderly constituents, Sarah's Circle. There's a lot of people who have disabilities who can't just, move to the side of the sidewalk if there's somebody there walking a dog, or, a family with a stroller and you can't really walk by them. I think, maybe people will need to park a little bit further away, but you're not really supposed to be out in your car anyway. So if it's close by, I would rather prioritize people walking out on the street, getting, most of the people out there are just outside because they need to be at this point. So I think it's really important to make sure there's a way that people don't have to walk in the street, because I keep doing that and I think it's unsafe. People are driving faster right now, or because there are fewer cars, and I just think it's a really unsafe time to be a pedestrian, and I want to do anything we can to try, maybe I agree there are bus stops along the way, and so hopefully we can find a way to work within that parameter, but like let's do all that we can to try.
Agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, I think this probably is related to, we just live in different parts of the city. As a new commissioner, the only things people have actually reached out to me is asking when we're going to implement something like this. Two of the constituents, one a family of four and a real estate agent, both have cars. And I think my, southern side of the ANC down here, like I'm right along here with Meridian Hill Park. Basically, you've got joggers running out in the middle of 16th Street. I think just right back to your point, I've got cars that are shooting through here like a racetrack and stuff, because normally they couldn't do that. And in my thinking, like this would give a lot of those folks that are running around the park and stuff and running so tightly when people are trying to get to the grocery store and stuff, like a little bit of space to get away from everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. We have a few hands up to members of the public, so there are no more comments from commissioners. I'll just start taking a couple of those. Okay, starting with Zach. Please go ahead. Okay, Zach. All right.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay.
That was Gordon muted me. It wasn't my fault. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Bowles, for the time you put into thinking through these routes and this resolution. I live up in the northeast corner in SMD 05. Unfortunately, my representative isn't here to speak for us today, but I think that there's really the fundamental flaw in Mayor Bowser's program and DDOT's criteria is that most of this neighborhood, at least in my experience, walks to the grocery store and to essential services. We all live close enough to essential services, fortunately, that we don't necessarily need to get into our cars and drive to them. And so the idea that it's only within a block of essential services that this is necessary doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm walking on a sidewalk that at its widest point is 6 feet in order to go the block to a block and a half to the supermarket. And I think that the route that Commissioner Bowles has pointed out allows us to use that space to get to grocery stores and convenience stores. When I walk down Columbia Road from my home, unfortunately, I don't feel the same way that the residents of Colorama Park do, that there's plenty of space. On the north side of Columbia Road, the sidewalk on the south side of Columbia Road is overtaken by a construction site. And on the north side is 16 feet wide. And unfortunately, between all the users of it, there's just not enough space for us. So I really, not only do I appreciate the idea of extending the sidewalks in front of essential services, I think it's necessary to push back and say that there need to be extensions and neighborhood road closures as selected by the neighbors more thoroughly throughout Adams Morgan and the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Mr. James.
Hi, took me by surprise there. I think that the plan on the table is a little too ambitious. It may come to needing to do that, but you're going to have conflicts, as Commissioner Guthrie pointed out. Like, I live on the 1800 block of Colorama. I'm pretty close to the post office on 18th. And, you know, I often go up Colorama to Columbia, to Streets Market, or Yes, or So's Your Mom, and so forth, in normal times. So Commissioner Guthrie neglected to mention the L2 buses. So you can have the Mount Pleasant 42s, 45s, and the L2s coming at the same time, crossing. And if you take away parking, if you create pedestrian spaces that jut out into the street, say near Lapis and so forth, the buses are going to come to loggerheads, you know, because there's always going to be somebody, there's going to be a UPS truck blocking a lane or something like that. So I think it's going to get in the way of the good movement of buses. And the same thing goes for Columbia Road between 18th and 16th, because you got the Mount Pleasant buses, occasional H bus, you've got the circulator. So, you know, I would say that the sidewalks, like directly in front of Safeway, it's a good wide sidewalk. And I agree with Zach that as you move towards 16th, it gets much narrower as you are in front of the large apartment building. That's a bit of a problem. And I'm not sure of the solution, but I do know that the buses will want to be traveling. And, you know, we can't get in the way of that. That's so, you know, a so-called smart policy to have people riding buses, although I'm not going to get on a bus. There's too many things you can touch where you could get, you know, infected. But, and I don't see anybody riding them. You know, by Harris Teeter, the sidewalks are narrow. I think that needs some relief. I think that possibly one side of parts of Columbia where there's, like, for instance, the 1800 block, which is bounded on the commercial side, you know, by Perry's at one end and Lapis at the other. Maybe just treating one side of the street where there's apartment buildings mainly, the side that doesn't contain all the commercial. I guess that's the east side at that point. Might be okay. I just think, you know, there will be a crunch because for parking, you know, if all those parking places are taken away, I mean, DC police and DPW personnel are not out ticketing like they normally are. So, you know, we're not getting as many visitors, so the parking crunch isn't quite as bad. But if you tell, you know, neighborhood residents that, you know, they're going to be looking harder and harder for a parking place, that's not a great solution either. And I'd just like to mention something. My next birthday will be my 70th. I'm fairly fit, but I've got bad knees. So if I'm going to do a major shop and like come back with 3 or 4 bags of heavy groceries, I will ride in my vehicle. I'll park underneath Harris Teeter or underneath Safeway so that I just physically do it. You know, that's part of the different people who live in the neighborhood. You know, older people, we start to get a little decrepit, you know, and some don't have that problem, and more power to them. Anyway, I just think that you need to tone this plan down as at least a starter to see, you know, how it works out with some of the places that have been identified as being part of it. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. James. Brian, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Amir. I just wanted to make sure that that you guys pay special attention to the restaurants. these people who are, they're kind of struggling to survive, and the only thing that's keeping them going right now is takeout and delivery. And particularly the 1800 block of Columbia, where you have Perry's and Mintwood Place and Pzt Bar and Astor and all these, it's a whole row of restaurants. If you took all the parking away from there, it would be really difficult for people to pick up orders, for the Uber Eats of the world to come pick up stuff, and all that. And like I said, these guys are barely hanging on, or really not even barely hanging on. They're doing this to lose less money while this is happening. So yeah, taking away places for the pickup for people driving their cars and picking up food, or delivery services would have a potentially devastating impact on them. So I would just ask you to pay special attention to those businesses.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Other comments? There have been some comments coming in through chat about the bus stops, and some especially good comments coming from Cynthia, that the bus stops are generally no parking zones anyways, and that with the exception of the few minutes where a bus comes in and out, cars can't park there regardless, and that people have a hard time maintaining the necessary physical distance and when they're walking along Colorama and they're walking along Columbia to get to those essential stores, that this would be helpful to them. So any other comments from commissioners before we move to a vote?
My understanding of the mayor's criteria is that they simply will not put pedestrian-only lane where there is a bus stop. That just cannot be included in the sidewalk extension because buses need to use those bus stops. I don't care whether it's every 15 minutes, every half hour. They're not part of that plan. So they cannot be included as a request for a sidewalk extension that's going to happen.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. They can't put barriers there. But I think the point of that Cynthia was making was that cars can't park there. There's not really an extraordinary thing that needs to be done about removing parking there, because cars aren't usually in there, so people can just pop out there for a moment and come back to the sidewalk as needed. So that was that particular point.
So could I speak to that point as well?
Sure, yeah.
So I would like to say that these definitely are recommendations, and it's all approximations by address. And the addresses that I have put, they are not the ones directly in front of the bus stop. I feel like specifically the one that comes to mind is the La Peace, the bus stop in front of that restaurant, correct? That to me, I feel like, and up to Perry's, I feel like there definitely could be a sidewalk extension that would not impede any bus traffic, because we would just simply move the barrier back onto the sidewalk where the bus would essentially turn in. So wherever there was parking, instead of having parking, make a diagonal barrier from to essentially ensure that the bus doesn't get into the protected sidewalk. So I don't necessarily see that as like the biggest hurdle. And I would have to see how they would be able to implement any sidewalk expansions if they simply were excluded from having a bus stop be near, because as denoted, a lot of bus stops are near essential services. So I think that there is a way to put a protected sidewalk in on that space and not interfere with the bus stop, And I'm sure there's further guidance and further consultation that we could have with DDOT. I by no means want to have a protected sidewalk in front of a bus terminal. That makes no sense to me. And that's not what this proposal is about.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Bowles. Other comments from commissioners? I want to say that this will definitely allow for better social distancing, and we've all had such a burden. Businesses, residents, everyone has been disrupted, all in an effort to help combat this virus and to flatten the curve, to work together during this public health emergency. We have to take extraordinary measures, and this is something that I think is pretty simple. There's less traffic and we need the space. So thank you, Commissioner Bowles, for putting this together. I do want to add a little friendly and add to your list of bullet points the west sidewalk of the 2400 block of 18th Street. And that's where the Wawa is. Like I said, that's a 24-hour store. It's both kind of like a carry-out restaurant, and it has essential home goods that you can get from it. So I think it's pretty important to be on that list.
Yeah, I would accept that as a friendly and denote it as an essential. I also would like to put the conditions on just getting more specificity in regards to where that extension ends and where that extension begins. If you are able to provide more clarity.
I think there's a bulb out there that's going to, there's a sidewalk bulb out there that's probably going to be a natural stop and start. But for DDOT, we can give them the block and then they can figure out where it needs to go exactly. There's also a bus stop up there, but that's all the way on the north side, right next to Suntrust Plaza.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the south side of the bulb out, I think, makes the most sense. And yeah, we can add that to the resolution. Or I mean, I would be interested in. I think that makes sense. It's across my single member district.
I would think that creates a problem for businesses that are doing a lot of pickup drop-off sort of issues.
So my thought with the pickup drop-off thing is that if we want to solve that issue, then I would love to see recommendations from the bid or this body for the pickup
already
drop-off.
have some pickup drop-off zones that are there.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is my mute on or not?
No, I hear you.
They already have designated places on 18th, and I think that's one of them that you're now specifying as a pedestrian zone.
I think
and
that
my
one
experience on 18th is that there just are no people out there now. You don't have too many people that are having problem social distancing because nobody's going there right now.
I see the convenience store aspect as a friendly, but I can leave it separate as well. I mean, ultimately, I would like to be able to tell residents that they can go to all of the essential services in Adams Morgan and that they will have social distance. They will be abiding by physical distancing guidance.
So the address of the Wawa is 2424 18th. So I would put the west sidewalk of the 2400 block of 18th, approximately at approximately 2424 18th. That's the specific friendly I'm proposing. My understanding of the pickup drop-off zones on 18th is that there is one, but it's not on that particular bulb out. It's at 2434. And then there's some on the other side of the street, and those can be maintained. So
I would also.
Do you want to write it into the resolution?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I also want to take this as an opportunity to tell folks that if they do takeout, walk to grab it, because the DC just passed a law to cap the commission fees for all of these takeout services. So like, it's great if you can't, that's what they're there for. But if you can, please go and shop at a local business. They would love to have your business.
Okay, and the one other thing I want to point out, because this came in through chat, is that these are temporary. These sidewalk extensions are during the public health emergency. This isn't a permanent thing. So I saw a couple of concerned residents asking about whether these are temporary or permanent. So I'm just, do I have edit access to this doc? Just gonna write in.
You do.
Yeah.
Comments. Are you on the comment one? Oh, that's you right there.
Okay. All right. Good.
Come on, technology.
24, 18th. Okay. Nice. So shall we call to a vote? All those in favor of the resolution as discussed and indicated online, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Against?
Opposed? Yes. No.
Any abstentions?
Cool.
Okay. So 5-1-0.
Yay. Thank you. And
Thank you, Commissioner.
I hope all of the commissioners thoroughly read what they were required to do from here on out. But once we hear back from DDOT, essentially what the extensions will look like, we just need to let folks know that this area is safe. So we can't right now because we can't, confirm that. But once we go DDOT, we need to let folks know that through social media and listserv posts. So thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. The one thing, Japer, I'd say is if you could just move your the be it resolved so that the sidewalk extensions, to Commissioner Guthrie's point, of you have two ideas that are a little bit conflated. If you can move the sidewalk extensions up to be the first be it resolved, and just so that DDOT can see that when I get this resolution over to them. Perfect. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item, a grant request from Lighthouse. Do we have anyone from Lighthouse on the line?
I know we did earlier, but it's late now.
Well, they did present last month, and I know you've been in discussion with them, and I'm recused from this.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and lead this, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So so based on our previous discussion, we were going to, based on our previous discussion with the applicant, while we agreed that the applicant's mission and that the grant was in great purpose and had a lot of really good standing, we still have to abide by an ANC law. And it does require a public good test, and they're under the law, Essentially, the office of the ANC, the director of that office determines what that test is. So in further vetting this application, I sent him, his name is Gottlieb Simon. I sent him the application as well as our grant guidelines, specifically our criteria in evaluating a grant. And he was not able to identify the public purpose as a community good for all of the funding. However, he did make a denoted disclaimer that as of yesterday, and I don't believe it's been signed just yet, but there is an opportunity for advisory neighborhood commissions to authorize grant funding for essentially COVID-related funds. A part of this application did have COVID-related funds, and Director Gottlieb specifically stated that those funds would fall under the public good. So I think it would be reasonable for us to split this grant application into essentially 2 grant applications, one that relates to the furniture purpose and then one that relates to the COVID response. Let me figure out how to screen share right now to discuss more about what the COVID related response is. But essentially it relates to gift cards and PPE material, PPE gear for folks directly in Adams Morgan. So does anyone have any questions right now while I pick this up?
It looks like Matt might want to speak about the grant.
Okay.
Thanks, Mikhail, and thanks, Japer. I'm on the board of Lighthouse, and I was not prepared to discuss this grant application tonight. I take it from the lack of commentary that Brian Hart or Jingle is present. And maybe I would just advise that before the ANC suggests splitting the grant and voting on a portion of the grant, that we provide the team an opportunity to modify the application just based on what you just learned yesterday.
So in response to that, I was able to get in contact with Jing Wen, and this is this is actually what they were interested.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
they
you.
would like for us to have a separate. I did say that I would also explain that typically whenever we provide a grant, that overall we would be reimbursed by the government in our disbursement, and that a misallocation of funds, such as providing a grant that wouldn't fall under the public goods scope, would not be reimbursed. So I did say that I would also, put it to a vote with the commission, but with my advice or with my denotation that I don't think that we would get refunded for the furniture that would be purchased. So I also think that there is a good argument for us to go ahead and fund that. I think that the ANC grant law is extremely narrow and has, there's just numerous examples on what works and what doesn't work. So I think the bigger question is that if we do think that this is a worthy cause, which I think there's a lot of proof in that if we're willing to spend $3,000 and not get it reimbursed. As the treasurer, I wouldn't advise for that because I would always want the public services, I would always want to have as much money as possible and due diligence with that. In my other hat as the Public Services and Environment Committee, I look at the roles, I see what we spend money on, and I see that this could be a vital service. So I honestly don't know how I would vote for the additional $3,000 that wouldn't be reimbursed. But
I have a suggestion.
yeah.
I talked with Brian today and had also talked with Gottlieb about my concerns about it. And my understanding is that he's fine, particularly with the new grant language, the new authorization of grant language in the emergency legislation with the PPE portion of the grant, but that he was a little concerned that it wasn't really fleshed out well enough to be supportable by the Office of the ANC. What I thought might be a good solution here is to next month pass a resolution based on a new application where they ask for $2,000 for the PP&E portion and adequately specify it out so that it meets the OANC requirements. My understanding of the situation is that we're in a situation where money is going to be needed now and next month as well. So that it seems to me that we could provide them more than what they asked for on the part of the grant, have it something that we can get back, and have it something that also clears the auditor's portion of the Office of the ANC by making sure that it's specific enough and described enough so that it's clear.
Yeah.
Ted, for what it's worth, I think that's a sound idea, and it sounds like Brian would agree.
Yeah, if we could get, I believe that Jing Wayne is actually on the line now, so if they would like to speak on it. But yeah, I again am only just trying to relay what their wishes were. I think that that is a great compromise. However, my issue again would just be continued of delayed funds because they came previously. But I mean, it is due diligence, so that is something that we should keep into consideration. I want, in my, I guess, looking at what I'm trying to do, I want to make sure that we're able to effectively and appropriately give out and disperse this money. So
And I
see
want to
it
make pro-life as treasurer simpler.
exactly.
And
exactly.
if we get it sort of pre-approved by the Office of the ANC,
exactly,
it's going to make life just much simpler.
Yeah. But are we able to unmute the applicant?
Yes, I'm here.
Yep.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you, commissioners. Ted, would you mind repeating your proposal again? I only caught half of it.
Well, you originally were asking for 4,000, 3,000 for furniture, 1,000 for the COVID-related stuff, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what I'm suggesting is that you basically ask for $2,000 for the stuff that clearly we can give you, which is the COVID portion of it. Instead of asking for 1,000, ask for 2,000. Make sure that the grant is written with the specificity that the Office of the ANC requires for an articulation of how that's going to be spent, and that we can approve it the first week of June.
And another 2K as portion of our original proposal for the furniture part?
The furniture part does not look like it's going to be authorized and approved, is my concern. And I don't feel as fiduciaries for our constituents that we can make decisions about the public money where it's not something that is authorized to be reimbursed. Because basically we wind up, normally with our grants, we get the money back from the Office of the ANCs, but they take off from our regular allotment for anything that is not authorized. And so we wind up actually paying like twice for something that isn't authorized. So I can't in good conscience support, I support what you're doing. I love what you're doing, but we can't get the Office of the ANC to agree that that's within the grant criteria, particularly with the extension. I don't think it's something that I as an ANC commissioner can vote for.
Thank you, Ted. It's clear to me now, and here's my concern. So I understand that the portion we asked for furniture, whether it's $2,000 or $1,000 or whatever amount would not be reimbursed. So another concern of mine was if we further delay the process, that even for the COVID-19 part, we're talking about next month. So it's another month of waiting and disperse of fund, hence how Lighthouse would use that fund to help the community as a whole. So I wonder if there's a chance that we could request $2,000 as of right now, and we will approve it, and then we will use that fund to either buy groceries or grocery gift card or PPE if they are available as soon as possible. So my main concern here is further delay of fund and people are in need.
Yeah, I understand that, Jingwen, and like I say, I support what you guys are doing. I just want to make sure that we do it within the criteria that we're allowed to do it. And just setting aside a pot of money for general purposes rather than specifying what you're going to be buying with it is not something that the Office of the ANC says okay to. And we are going to have need this month, next month, the month after that. You are not going to have a problem with people not having need when we get this approved at a meeting the 1st of June and get a check signed as soon as possible thereafter. You won't be able to use that during this month, that's true. But I don't feel comfortable voting for something that is not going to get the approval stamp from the Office of the ANC in any amount. And my understanding from the Office of the ANC is that they want more specificity in exactly what is going to be purchased with the money that comes under the PP&L or PP&E portion of the grant.
So could I read the exact response that I got from Gottlieb related to the PPE? And I think we may be able to put this to bed or not. Director Gottlieb says, although it is not explicitly discussed in this way, the purchase of personal protective equipment, which would serve to reduce the transmission of COVID-19, is something that surely and obviously would benefit the community as a whole. It would therefore meet the law's public purpose test and thus be okay with the ANC to fund. The application, however, lacks specificity regarding how the funds will be spent by the application. While I saw some amounts, I did not see the budget in the application or in the additional information that you sent regarding to PPE. Perhaps that can be addressed to your meeting. For transparency and accountability reasons, grant funds can only be used for what is specified in the application and should not be treated as a blank check.
Tucker, would you also mind reading the next part of the email?
Yeah, certainly. I would have ended my email to you at this point. Okay, anyway. He was talking about essentially yesterday, the council included a temporary amendment to the ANC law as part of the latest emergency package. The amendment allows ANCs during the state of emergency to provide grants for humanitarian assistance and specifically authorizes expenditures for food, even if this is a duplication of DC government services. Accordingly, the grocery gift cards mentioned in the grant application would now be permissible along with the PPE supplies.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here is we want the fund as soon as possible for the purpose of general public, that if we get a fund, no matter it's $1,000 or $2,000 or $4,000, we will want to use it in public service. In this case, it seems more likely to be COVID-19 related instead of Lighthouse general program to serve Adams Morgan's residents who need furniture. And I just want to make sure that that happens as soon as possible because people are in need. It doesn't matter. It does matter if with the amount, if it was 1,000 or 2,000 or 4,000. But my question is, if it's if it is possible for us to request a amount right now that we will guarantee that it will be spent on either PPE or grocery gift card, which is according to the regulation passed by the council yesterday, that ANC 1C will be reimbursed for, that Lighthouse can use to on those purposes.
But there's two separate issues here. One is the whatever it is we're giving money for something that we can give something for, right? The second question is whether the application meets the standards of the Office of the ANC in specificity as far as what the grant will be used for. And my understanding of that email is that he's saying those two purposes work. The protective devices and the food, those work under the standard, but they have to be adequately specified in order for the Office of the ANC to approve them. And when we direct something, we can't just say we're giving Lighthouse $2,000 for the general purposes of this and that and leave it at that and let you make your discretionary decision on what you do. You have to put forward something that is adequate for them to judge whether what was done with the money was what was authorized to be done with the money. That's my understanding from Gottlieb Simon. And I don't want to vote for something that we can't get reimbursed for, because if we can't get reimbursed for it, we can't give money further down the line to other organizations that want to do good work. So I appreciate that you would like it tomorrow. I would love to give it to you tomorrow, but I don't think in good faith the ANC can do that. I think we need to vote it in at our next monthly meeting after we've specified exactly what it's going for, so that the auditor can look at it and say, that's what the money was spent on. That's what they were authorized to do, and that's what they did. That's my
Thank you,
take.
Ted. Thanks, Ted. That's clear.
I don't know if this would be acceptable to the commission, but I would be interested in passing $2,000 grant and working with on the condition that we work with the applicant to find out the specific cost, like that's, can you all see my screen? If we could get the specific cost of PPE from this $2,000 and the specific cost of gift cards broken down. And
Jeffrey, just want to add up here. So PPE is up to how available they are, and I'm not certain how much we could get, but grocery gift cards is definitely a big need for our community right now. Lighthouse has sent out multiple emails to our partner organizations, and surprisingly and not surprisingly, that most of them ask for grocery gift cards and some ask for PPE. So it would be a combination of both.
So I wouldn't say that's not surprising, because there's definitely folks that need gift cards in our neighborhood. I would be willing to work if we were able to pass this resolution in favor of a grant for $2,100 gift cards that would be dispensed from Lighthouse. I don't know if that would be acceptable to the commission, but that's $2,000.
Looks like John has his hand up. Whoa, sorry.
John, you can just
saying,
unmute
yeah,
yourself
go for
to,
it.
to just start talking.
I wasn't unmuted. I was just waiting to be recognized. I think it's important for us to fund the emergency COVID-related needs in the community. And I'm happy to see that the council is opening the door for us to do that. I don't think we should stop at $2,000. I think we should offer $4,000 to Lighthouse to come up with a plan for how they would spend $4,000 to meet these community needs that the council has approved. I don't think we can vote on something until we see the plan from Lighthouse, but I would like to assure our friends at Lighthouse that I would find $4,000 in our budget for this purpose, as long as they can lay out the kind of plan that would be acceptable to the office of the ANC and to Commissioner Guthrie.
Thank you, John.
I
Thank you,
also,
John.
just something that we talked about last meeting that I think would be helpful is just really breaking it down, okay, we're gonna spend, $2,000 on this, and here's exactly what we plan to buy. We've had other grant applications that have done that, like the one with the strollers for the daycare facility where they provided a link, here's the exact stroller we want to buy. So I think, like everyone's saying, the more specifics there are, the better the case will be.
I guess I probably should apologize here. I asked Lighthouse to respond to question 6 of all the criteria that we evaluate the grants for. And that was in combination of the entire $4,000 grant, $3,000 dedicated towards furniture and $1,000 dedicated towards us. I think that if you're able to answer all of those questions, you should be able to pass the public test. However, it seems that we have in our current grant guidelines criteria that if followed and answered still would not meet the public purpose test according to the current director of the Office of ANC, who is the one who determines all of this. So I have continued those conversations to hopefully adjust our criteria so we don't have to go through this again. But I do think that, it seems like there's a lot of offers on the table. It seems like we just need to figure out how we can get money to Lighthouse in an ethical way.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I totally agree. And I understand where all the commissioners are coming from and standing at. So I think the main problem or concern we're juggling here is, we are all working with good heart trying to help the community, but we're also working on how to meet the criteria or the legal standard of the grant. And my other concern, as I mentioned before, is the timing of the grant. As we all seen from SBA or the government in general, that the government has promised a lot of different kind of grants to the public, but rarely have people seen PPP coming in, SBA loan coming in, and people are struggling. And what we're doing here is, if we move it to next month, it will create further delay, which is, if eventually Lighthouse gets some money and use it on the purpose, it will be better than nothing. But I do want to raise the flag that it's another month of delay and people are struggling, people need grocery. It's not like a car that, fine, I don't need a car for a month. Next month I have a car, it will be better. But people need the money to buy grocery to get PPE so they can be safe and they can be fed.
I don't have any disagreement with that. My problem is that as a responsible ANC commissioner, I have to make sure that the grants that I am voting in favor of meet the criteria of the Office of the ANC. And unfortunately, the grant as presented doesn't. And I'm more than willing to look at, the bigger amounts than what you originally suggested for the food dollars and the PP&E, but I need to have it set out in a way that is acceptable to the Office of the ANC. And I can't do that tonight. And unless we do something tonight, you don't get any money until after the June meeting. So it doesn't seem to me that we have a reasonable solution that will get you the money tonight.
Commissioner Jackson, sounds like you have something to say there.
So I'm just sitting here thinking through this, and it looked like the director explicitly said that the gift cards are okay should that measure pass. So why not divide it up? Like we could do a grant this month with the gift cards at a set amount, and we could revisit the rest of it next month.
Thank you, Jackson. That's a great proposal, but my only concern there is, I don't know, I'm not sure, you guys can tell me that if there's a certain clause on the ANC bylaw saying that if one grantee received a grant from ANC, the applicant would not receive another grant within 12 months period.
That's my recollection.
I think in which case, I think it's less ideal, but also within our means and the legal standard. Let's push it back to next month, and Lighthouse will come up with another proposal specifying where the money is gonna go to, according to the emergency regulation, to address the current situation and get ANC reimbursed afterwards.
So could I think we can make a recommendation here and I could feel good about it. If there's a way that we could draft a resolution and be in favor of essentially 20 gift cards to Lighthouse or 40 gift cards at $50 a piece.
The problem with that is that our rules say that you can't do more than one grant per annual cycle for a particular applicant.
Exactly.
We'd like to get them more money than but we need to have it set out before we actually approve the grant. We've got to have it set out in a way that is sufficient. We can't like justify it after the fact to the office of the ANC. The ducks have to be in the row when we vote for whatever we're going to vote for. And the ducks aren't in a row yet, as far as I can see.
Any other, Michaela, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the applicant is in favor of tabling it, so let's table it, right, to next month?
Okay.
I'd like to give Lighthouse some guidance in terms of the amount and the purpose, so that they're not confused and don't come up with something that we find objectionable. And my target for the amount is $4,000. And for the purposes, the personal protective equipment and the food.
My question as to the food is the number of people who are going to be served by however many of the things that are going out. And are they members of the Adams Morgan community? Are they Ward 1 residents? Who are they? And how that gets distributed.
You would want to focus, Ted, on Adams Morgan residents, and I think that's fine. We can make that part of our guidance to Lighthouse.
I mean, in their current grant proposal, they are all of these numbers in this COVID special assistance line item is just for the ANC 1C targeted area. I'm sure Lighthouse does other business elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely think they already have.
I'm not sure that they want to limit themselves to only those people whom they have helped in the past. I don't know how they're planning to administer this, but okay. I'm sure that the need includes more than just the people they've relocated in Adams Morgan, for example.
So if I'm correct, the applicant is interested in reapplying and working with me and anyone else that's interested for a $4,000 coronavirus package to Lighthouse.
Yeah, I think that's
that's
good way
correct.
to look at it.
Okay.
Is the applicant interested in pursuing that? I know that we're very diligent with our funds, but another part of this is that putting all of this work in, I know it sounds like a lot for some folks, and it definitely is helpful, and this is why they're applying, but we also don't want to, I don't want to say overburden, but we want this to be an appealing process for folks. So this is my fault and I apologize. Jingwen, if you would like to give me a call tomorrow or after this meeting, I'd love to talk to see how we can repurpose your application.
Yeah, sounds good, Jeffrey. I will give you a call tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Do we get
my only question here is not really a question. It's just thought in my mind that why is food and PPE as public benefit and furniture is
We
not.
could
because we're
discuss
also-
that, we
we're-
could discuss
we're-
that offline.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's not productive use of the meeting time. But
Yeah.
what I
Sure.
would like to know is whether or not we need to have a formal motion to set this over to next month's meeting or not and vote on it.
I move that we table this table this applicant until the June meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Perfect.
Okay, so that was 4-0-0 for tabling.
Correct.
5.
Yeah.
Five,
Or
sorry.
Amir, are you abstaining
I'm
or
abstaining. Yeah.
completely? So you're not,
4-0-1. Yeah. I'm totally recused from this.
so, okay, so 4-0,
Yeah.
sorry,
4-0-1.
501, isn't it?
5-0-1.
5-0.
What Michaela said.
Yeah. 5-0-1. 5-0-1. Okay, so moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Great Weight audit that was done by the DC Auditor's Office. I move that we table this discussion, this resolution, to the following month so that we all can read through this and have a more thorough discussion and resolution in front of us.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Zatoli. All those in favor of tabling the resolution?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 6-0-0. I have two devices and a notepad in front of me. Somehow I'm making it through. Been to like 3 or 4 years of ANC meetings, and I don't think I usually bring a notepad with me. Somehow I'm doing it over Zoom. Anyhow. So the last item on the agenda is a resolution to ensure voter access. This was a resolution coming from Commissioner Bowles. Commissioner Bowles, do you want to grab the mic?
Yeah, certainly. So there's a few other ANC commissions that are proposing strategies and making recommendations for the Board of Elections. In a world of coronavirus, there's a stay-at-home order, and there's numerous things that the Board of Elections should do to make sure that we have a really good voter turnout. If you're not familiar with the topic, DC has historically low voter turnout, just all throughout any state and any jurisdiction. We do have we do have numerous local voter experts that actually live in Adams Morgan, and this was shared with them to see if we could get any additional feedback. They provided me with a lot of resources, and as well as a few recommendations that I think that it would be wise for the ANC to show our residents that we care and that we believe that their vote matters. So I could cover a few of these, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know. The first recommendation is to have the Board of Elections mail every registered voter an absentee ballot with posted paid return envelope, and that needs to be independent of the general election voter guide. So as we discussed in the beginning of the meeting, folks will be getting a voter guide like this, and in the center of it was this guy. And it is a prepaid postage envelope. And what's great about it being together is that most people look at this and throw it into the trash. There is, at least from the expertise and the advice that I've gotten, having these separate is just one more touch point that we can get to folks so they can be encouraged to vote. The next one is a BOE mail. Have the Board of Elections mail every DC resident a postcard on the new election process and guidance with that. Again, this is another touch point that folks can have and let them know, like, hey, things are different this year. You're not going to go and cast a ballot. You shouldn't be standing in lines. You should be using an absentee ballot. So just one more touch point. The next is to update the Board of Elections phone app. Currently, those that have Android are experiencing a lot of technical difficulties, whereas those with an Apple phone, they can easily access the DC BOE application, DC Vote app, and register to vote, change their voter registration. But it's just not something that works for Android users. There also needs to be a significant increase in communication on social media, radio, TV, and other mediums, and these need to be specifically targeted towards lower voter populations. So we should be hearing and seeing these changes all across different mediums and forums. And this is specifically geared towards lower voter populations, of which Ward 1 does have. We have numerous languages that are spoken within our district and within the ward, as in addition to numerous socioeconomic levels. So we are a diverse city, we are a diverse ward, and a diverse ANC. And so ensuring that we are able to get these specific guidance out to all different types of folks, I think is crucial. And that's something that the BOE has not started doing just yet. I think we also should include election workers and temporary election workers and volunteers as essential employees, therefore guaranteeing PPE and safe workplace that would abide by physical distancing guidelines. I am hopeful because Chairman Charles Allen, Councilmember Charles Allen from Ward 6, he is the one who will be mostly in charge of BOE oversight. And this is something that he's already talking about, but we need to support him and support the workers. We will, since we, instead of having so many volunteer and staff at each individual precinct, now what's going to happen is we're going to have folks who will be opening up absentee ballots and registering them and then feeding them into machines. These are jobs. This is a job that is going to expand in the temporary sphere, but it's something that we need to think about. And in addition, not just hiring these folks, but they're going to need PPE gear, and they're going to need to be in space that will allow them to physically distance. In my resolution, I denote that in the 2008 election, the turnout rate was 46.29%. Of that, only 12,599 ballots were used casting an absentee ballot. So just frankly, the Board of Elections does not have the staffing to increase the current demand. If we're trying to get everybody to use absentee ballots, and we only used to take in 5% of the total votes that were absentee ballots, there's going to be more staff and more processing that's going to be required. And so it's great to think about that now for the general election. And then lastly, we need to install, and this is something that I don't think was sent out to everyone. It is the most updated, but is to install secure and 24/7 ballot drop boxes at strategic and high traffic areas in all 8 wards. This is a part of Brianna Doe's bill, and a lot of these are a part of our council members' vote by mail bill that she introduced last year. It was heard in the Judiciary Committee and it was put on hold. I also want to say that the reason why none of these recommendations are just straight up vote by mail is that unfortunately, DC does not have the capacity to upscale something at that size and so quickly. From what I've read, Oregon, Washington, these other states take at least 2 years to fully implement a vote by mail system. And I would rather us do something right than completely miss the mark and have the integrity of our elections be called into place. Which our current president probably will call into place anyway, but I digress. It's getting too late. I think that these are reasonable requests that we can have. They're already in conversations with council members, but I think it's wise for us to suggest things that make the most sense for our district, and these seem to be it. And I look forward to any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bowles. Any questions from, oh, I see Ted, please go right ahead.
I think I got it. Okay. Am I still on mute?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of these, you know, it's really sort of no brainer. I assume that this came from some different sources within the district who are promoting this to move things forward, and it's fine with me for us to approve something like that. One of the things it didn't include that disturbs me is that on my computer, I could go through and get the application for vote by mail for absentee ballot on the computer, but I would have to print it off,
exactly,
sign it, turn it into a PDF and send it somewhere else. But on the phone, apparently I don't even need to do that. I don't understand why they can't make their applications consistent. And it seems to me that that's this, you know, like old guys shaking his fist saying, why don't you do something about this? If we're going to do that, I'd like to see that provision put in.
Yeah, and to address that, I asked and downloaded the app for verification. And yeah, essentially this request and these recommendations are to bring absentee voting, which is a typical 2-step signature verification process, into now the same day. It aligns with the same day voting process. So essentially you still have one signature.
But my point is that on the phone, I don't actually have to sign it, do I?
So it's like whenever you go to the grocery store and you use the little swivel thing, and that's due because most cell phones are touch screen. You're able to, that technology is available, but on the computer, it's not. And what a lot of jurisdictions are doing is just eliminating that step entirely, because you're able, once you receive your ballot, so this is what it'll look like. You'll receive your ballot, right? So then there is an inner secrecy ballot, and then a mail-in, and then your signature, like you would whenever you would go and normally vote. So it's definitely different. It's changing with the times, but overall, hopefully this can increase voter turnout. I mean, it's not good. And I mean, we're the best in the ward, but in the ward, I mean, ward compared to other wards, we're not there. So I think with a lot of these recommendations, we could actually increase the voter turnout.
Right. I'm just asking if we can put in my old man clench his fist, say, why can't we have a similar across all applications?
I can kind of address that for you, Ted. Oddly, my background's actually computer science, not politics. And so it's easier to secure smartphones than it is a computer.
It looks like, though, from the comments section that we may not have to worry about this at all, that the signature requirement was waived.
And
So,
that's something I saw on Twitter as well, but I looked at the Board of Elections site and they use really confusing language on that site. I mean, as I mentioned with the polling centers, no, all 44 precincts will be closed except for these ones that aren't closed. So yeah, they use confusing language.
And the website claimed that the thing that I had filled out but not signed had been sent on, right? Because I don't have a printing facility, and they claimed that I had successfully done this, but I have no belief that that actually is the case.
Download the app. Or use one of the other 5 different ways to request an absentee ballot.
I'm going to use the what came in the voter's guide. I just pulled it out today to do that.
Nice.
So I've got the envelope and I've got the application that I can fill out. But to me, it seems as long as we're making suggestions, they should figure out a way to make things relatively easy between cross applications.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm happy to add a friendly in there.
Well, apparently there is a reason from what Chris is saying.
I mean, and from, as a programmer, my concern would be more voting online on computers and necessarily requesting a absentee ballot anyway. So still don't necessarily know if it's that big a deal, but I think the concern would be like maybe some malware got on your machine, requested a ballot for you or something, or, you know, forwarded it off to a different physical address or something. But
oh, I definitely do not want to go down that hole.
No, I'm willing to live without it, but I just wanted to say that.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Doesn't seem like it. Is there a friendly that you're going to add, or
No?
No.
We're moving on. It's 10:30.
All right.
Let's vote on this.
Cynthia Poles has said that the signature isn't actually required, even though the form includes a signature line. The fact that the signature is not required is in the instructions for the form. So, you know, there's some more confusion there.
It's oh yeah, there you go, Walter. It's a vote for DC. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's call to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0-0. Well,
thank you.
Adjourned?
Yeah.
I move to
Wonderful seeing you all.
Yes, nice
Happy
seeing
birthday,
everyone.
Paper.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon, for
I'll send pictures of the
helping with this.
cheesecake.
thank you all. Have a good night.
For coming.
Bye, everyone.